What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. It is the Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, where doors will open an hour from now to come hang out with us in person. In the meantime, thanks for listening on the Team 980, 106.7 The Fan, the free Odyssey app, or watching us on YouTube at the Team 980 or at 106.7 The Fan. With Logan Paulsen, I am Craig Hoffman, getting you ready for Patriots and Commanders. Eventually, Logan. Of course, the big story of the week in Commanders land, though, is Chase Young and Montez Sweat, the trades, where those two guys no longer with the club. I assume most people listening heard that by now.
Spoiler alert?
Spoiler, I don't know. Spoiler on a live event. I don't think that's how that goes. There is an update as of yesterday. Montez Sweat just absolutely got paid by the Bears. That's a guy that
feel happy for him.
Yeah. Hey, man, I know he wanted to go to Atlanta. I know that he wanted to or stay in Washington. He had a great post thanking D.C. and how amazing they were, how much he enjoyed his time here. But when you show up in a new place and they give you $24.5 million a year, over $100 million total, you tend to acclimate to that place pretty well.
Yeah.
Obviously, Chase will have to wait another week to make his debut in San Francisco as the 49ers are on their bye week. But, Logan, our focus is here in D.C. and what is left behind emotionally, schematically, personnel-wise, anything else that's applicable here. As we sit here on a game day, the first one without both of these guys post-trade deadline, where's your head at in regards to them?
To the team, you're saying?
Yeah. But specifically to the – I'm not going to let you pull a Ron Rivera and be like,
answer,
what's on my mind is Sam Howell.
Yeah, no, I think, with regards to the team and after a trade like this, like what's going on, like what's going through a locker room. I remember, being in Atlanta and like one of my best friends got traded like the day before the season started. Like best friends, we'd go to dinner every day, and it's just weird. It's like you just become a ghost, like a memory, and you just got to move on. And I think that's the thing about the NFL that a lot of fans maybe don't understand is you're so indoctrinated in the business side of it that when stuff like this happens, it's just like, okay, here we go. Next thing. And I know that sounds like heartless, but that's just like it's a kind of a coping mechanism, honestly.
It's a survival mechanism.
Yeah, because like you can't just be like daggered, like having like a breakdown every time, someone leaves, because people leave all the time. Like I heard on Kime's podcast, he was talking about some comments Kendall made about how, people get hurt, people get traded, people get cut, and it's just you can't kind of give the emotional relevance to all these different people all the time. So I think while it's a big deal from a play standpoint, obviously those guys are very, very talented. These guys have been around the league for a long time. They know what's going on, and I don't want to say they've already forgotten, but it probably feels like that. If you were going there today, like the culture is like going to have completely moved on from those guys, and that's crazy to say. But having been in that experience a bunch in my career, like it's just how it goes, and it's part of the deal. So
my sense of it from someone who covered the league and was in the locker room for 5 years as a reporter is it doesn't really matter so much why a guy left. They're just kind of gone.
They're just gone.
And in that way, it's very similar to a guy who gets a season-ending injury where you're used to that guy being in his locker. You're used to those conversations between players. Maybe you as a reporter were able to go over and talk to that guy, or he was one of the guys that, was a bigger star on the team you talk to every week, and they're just gone. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's an empty locker. That's weird.
It's going to be filled.
Yeah, that's true too. And I got to actually double check. I didn't see any roster moves yesterday, which I thought was kind of interesting. Kind of strange. The Patriots signed someone to their practice or from their practice squad, but it doesn't seem like they elevated anyone. Not just with the trades, but with Ricky Stromberg being hurt and unavailable. And on Kime, his podcast, he said, John talked to Ricky, and it sounds like it's going to be like a long-term IR thing.
Wow.
With the kneecap. So. Obviously, either we missed it or it's not happening today, and we'll ultimately get some roster moves this week. But you maybe just have few guys fewer inactive. But the point here that like in terms of the locker room, they're just gone, and in that way, this is a normal type of thing, even if the reason is a little bit different.
Right.
That happens every week in the NFL. The one thing that I do think is fairly interesting with these two guys in particular is they're fairly large voices in that locker room.
Large people, too.
Yeah, that's something you brought up this week. I think – actually, no, JP brought it up on my show.
JP,
JP brought it up. He talked about how these guys, they sat just far enough apart that they would yell across the locker room at each other all the time, and, like, they're obviously great friends. And when you lose those kinds of voices and, obviously it's always a changing dynamic in the locker room, but when some of your loudest voices, for better or for worse, leave – what kind of void does that create in terms of that eeriness, that silence, and also the void of leadership? And, I think we look at like John and Terry as the leaders, but Chase was a super vocal guy. Montez, super vocal guy. How do they step up and fill those roles? And then we'll get into the schematics of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's a big deal when like guys with strong voices leave because there's a void and it needs to be replaced. I think honestly it'll probably be good for this team. I think there's some guys that are kind of lower on the roster. Maybe like just as a kind of an example, like a David Mayo, a James Smith-Williams, a Casey Tuhill. Give those guys more opportunity to step in and be leaders, because while they're not the best football players, they do kind of approach the game with a certain amount of professionalism that I think is great. So honestly, I think one of the reasons you make this move is to empower some of those other guys on your roster. And I've had conversations with people in like very high in corporate structure, and one of the things they say is like you've got to identify opportunities when leaders can step up and kind of give those guys opportunities to blossom. And, obviously there's been a lot of talk about Chase and his relationship to the team and to the leadership and all to the coaching staff, the front office, all that stuff. But I think this is kind of an opportunity to say, hey, he was unhappy. Let's get him out of here. Let's elevate and give some guys an opportunity to kind of step in and be and replace those voices in a different way, in a way that we're maybe more excited about, that's going to be a little bit more in our vision or our perspective. So I think that's what it does. And I think it's always really cool to see how that happens, on a team and within different organizations, how, a guy will leave, certain guy you didn't even know was, like you barely knew who was on the team. He was like the special teams guy. And all of a sudden his voice gets a little bit louder and you're like, man, he's got some good insight. He's a good motivator. He's playing hard and it elevates that side of the football or that element of the football team. So I think it'll be different, like you said. It always gets different. There's a lot of change on a roster in the season, but I think ultimately this is going to be good, and hopefully it allows guys who are approaching it the way that Ron and the staff want to be a little bit more vocal on the team, and I think that'd be very beneficial.
Yeah, I actually wonder if a guy like Deron Payne even steps up.
100%.
He's been the fourth guy in that room from a vocal leadership standpoint. Does he step up a little bit as a guy who's now really maturing? He's got the contract, obviously. He's got the production. John's always been kind of there. Does Deron step up into that void?
Sure.
I think that could be possible
or
too.
Jamin or Cam even, guys just having a larger platform just to kind of
100%.
Let their personality shine through.
There's also the reality that these are two nearly $25 million a year level pass rushers
Sure.
that you just not let walk out the door. You get great return for them, something we'll clearly be talking about in the offseason as we head towards draft time. But you have to replace their snaps on the field. What is lost and what is maybe gained when you swap out a Casey Tuhill and a James Smith-Williams and F.A. Obata for a Chase Young or a Montez Sweat, specifically with the two inside guys that they're playing with?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's always been very frustrating about Chase and Montez to a certain extent, Montez in a different way, is just there was never that elite production, consistent production, week in and week out. Obviously, there'd be flashes. Like I think back to Chase's game against the Bears, where his pressure rate's near 40%, which is like probably one of the highest rates in the league this season. So great job by him. And then he'd go on a game where you wouldn't hear from him from a pressure rate standpoint, from a hurry standpoint, from a sack rate standpoint, all that stuff. And then Montez, I think, is a guy that, while is an excellent football player, and I think is definitely deserving of that $24.5 million a year salary, is, his sack production always came not because of tremendous pass rushing nuance, but because of effort. And there is a difference between like the guys that have that innate kind of pass rushing ability, the Myles Garretts, the Nick Bosas, the TJ Watts, that kind of just are always creating sacks and pressures, through a technical acumen that Montez doesn't necessarily have. So I think that's something that has always kind of been a little bit frustrating with those two, is that the consistency with which they've played has not always kind of lived up to that reputation that they have of being, first round draft picks and all that kind of stuff. And that's not a knock on them. A lot of guys are like that. I think they're good football players, obviously.
I would even say they're very good football players in different ways. The consistency versus the consistency of Montez, that's consistently very good but not great, which is really, really valuable. But then also the I'd say the flashes of Chase, the moments of brilliance intermixed with moments of what is that guy doing out there?
Well, and I think also like with Montez, like just the like you mentioned the consistency, like he's maybe the best run stopping defensive end in the NFL, and like people don't see that. And I think there was this expectation by fans and maybe the leadership here on the team a little bit that he was going to be a consistent, 10 to 15 sack a year guy. And I don't think that's necessarily who he is. I think that 10 number is very reasonable, but to get into that top kind of pass rushing group, I don't think he had it. So I think moving on from those guys, again, some of that inconsistency is probably going to go because I think with the guys that are replacing them, Casey, James, F.A., Andre Jones, KJ Henry, kind of remains to be seen with those two young guys. But with those top three guys, I think you know exactly what you're going to get from them. I think you know exactly what they're going to do. You know exactly who they are. They're going to play in the context of the defense at a high level. And I think that certainty and that consistency is something that is very, very valuable. And also I think it does give you some flexibility. We talked about this on the podcast this week. Now I can call more zone pressures. I don't feel this pressure, this urgency as a defensive play caller to demand that Chase and Montez are rushers. I don't believe that. Now I say, let's drop Casey into coverage. Let's run a four-man pressure to the other side and have Casey drop out or James drop out. Or now we can run more games, and now they can kind of play off John and Payne a little bit better. So I do think it's funny how it works, man. Sometimes the sum of the parts are better than the individual pieces, and I think that's what you get here with this defensive line. And we'll see. Obviously, it might be wrong, but I do believe that level of trust and confidence in what those guys bring every single play and that they're going to do what they're supposed to do in the context of the defense. Because you mentioned that Chase sometimes kind of does whatever Chase wants, and Payne does the same thing. And it's not exclusive to Chase, but I think that ability to kind of get those guys in there is going to be kind of a net positive. I don't know. Net positive is probably strong, but
it's hard.
Yeah, it's because they are really good football players. Obviously, Chase and Montez.
You might get more consistency, but you lose some splash plays. A play where Montez or Chase uses their freakish ability to prevent someone from getting the edge. Even though James and Casey set great edges, they might not be quite as high because of the strength and the power. So that's some of those little things that we'll be watching, obviously, today and through the rest of the season. But at the end of the day, they get what we assume will be a top 40, maybe even top 35 pick from the Bears for Montez. And then they get the compensatory pick for Chase, which was, as multiple reports stated, the best offer on the market. Concerns about all kinds of stuff with Chase, but predominantly that knee injury that teams are not fully convinced that he is healed from yet. When we get back, we look at the other side of the ball, though. We'll get back to this Commanders defense and how it matches up specifically with New England later on in the show. But, speaking of defense, Bill Belichick has been one of the best for 40 years in the NFL, and he eats young quarterbacks for lunch. How to somehow prevent being the next one in that very long line. Next, it's Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you on the Take Command pregame show here on a Burgundy and Gold game day. Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day. 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Logan Paulsen there. Craig Hoffman here, and we have our eyes on New England, where the Commanders will take on the Patriots today, which means Sam Howell gets his first career crack, and who knows, Belichick, what's going on with him right now. Maybe last career crack at Bill Belichick?
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, I'd assume that Bill Belichick wants to coach next year, whether it's New England or – I know there was the rumor about here this week. I'm not even trying to start that because I don't –
What's the rumor?
Mike Florio was saying he's hearing that Josh Harris has interest in Bill Belichick. And I was like –
I mean, I would have interest in Bill Belichick.
Have interest, sure. I don't know that's the direction they want to go, especially with what he's done this year with his young quarterback.
No, but I'm saying, I hate when I hear reports like that because it's like, yeah, of course. If, Bill Belichick's like, yeah, if the price is right and he's a winning coach, I don't know. It just makes sense to me that,
you're not like, Bill Belichick, but I don't know.
Forget that guy.
Yeah. If you're trying to build something long sustainable for the future, I don't know you hire a guy who's set in his 70s. But the point is, Sam Howell has to face Bill Belichick today. That is for sure. And Bill Belichick defenses are perhaps the hardest to prepare for in the entire National Football League, Logan. You had to do it a couple times in your career.
Yeah.
How do you begin to prepare for a defense that could do anything?
I think it's like, obviously it's different for a tight end because it's like you kind of narrow your focus. It's like, all right, well, this is kind of the base structures they're going to play. These are the guys that are going to be in these spots. And you kind of treat the whole defense like X's, kind of saying, oh, this guy is number 21, but he's actually the Sam linebacker in this look. So if he's lined up in this spot, I'm going to block him, right? And so there's a little bit of that going on. You got to kind of, I don't want to say throw your rules out, but you got to kind of think of it in a completely different way because of the flexibility that their personnel gives them. As a quarterback, I have no idea what you do, quite honestly, because I would imagine it's extremely confusing because they have all of this flexibility down to down that is unlike anything you probably see around the NFL. At least in the games we've watched so far this year. I mean, we've watched a lot of film. And so they run kind of every coverage. They bring all sorts of complicated blitzes. And then in the context of those complicated blitzes, they run different coverages. So, for example, I was watching a game, I think it was against the Philadelphia Eagles week 1. They're bringing an all-out pressure. So, basically it's zero man. So, everyone's got a man. There's no safety in the middle of the field. You're bringing that guy under pressure. Philly leaves the back in, so the guy blitzing, the back blocks him. The guy that has the back man rushes, right? So they create this nice pressure on Jalen Hurts, and that's kind of cool, but that's pretty common. The thing that was amazing to me was that they're running mesh, which usually would kill any kind of zero coverage because you get guys crossing the field with outside leverage. You just hit the ball there. They actually, in zero, passed off the mesh. So the corner on the far right side of the formation passed his crosser to the nickel on the other side of the field, and then made an excellent tackle short of the sticks. So that's the type of stuff you're dealing with. You're seeing stuff that people do all the time, which is an overload pressure. You see zero, and then you see this really cool wrinkle on it because he's studied you. Bill Belichick and his staff has studied you, and they say, what do they like to do on 3rd and 7? They really like mesh or some type of crossers. Okay, if they're going to do that, we're going to pass it off, which is something you don't see very often. So that's the thing that I don't understand as a quarterback is there's literally no way you could be ready for that. There's no possible way because he's prepped that specifically for you and your little brain and your eyeballs. And so that's the thing. That's the thing about his defenses that are so. Another example is they're playing Miami. It's 3rd and 15. They played a drop 8 coverage, so they're rushing 3. It looks like Tampa 2 before the snap starts, and then they take the 2 safeties and buzz them down into kind of this lurk position with the guy who looked like the Tampa player basically playing cover 3, and Tua throws a pick on the dig. And I just was like, man, I don't know how you see that. I don't know how you identify that in the snap other than saying as I'm getting ready to throw the ball, there's a guy there, I got to check the football down. So they do a lot of stuff like that. So that's obviously a schematic thing that's very challenging.
Yeah.
Personnel-wise, you already alluded to this. They have a whole bunch of linebackers that becomes defensive ends on 3rd down, and on 1st and 2nd down, they've got safeties that'll come in and be linebackers, and just getting that stuff identified is going to be really challenging. So, in short, I think this is an excellent test for Sam Howell to kind of see where his maturation's at. It's completely at the opposite end of the spectrum of the Philadelphia Eagles, which is pretty we're going to run man, we're going to play single high. It's going to be really simple and straightforward. Sam does a great job with that. He's shown he does a great job with that.
Right.
How does he do with this, which is kind of in the vein of the Buffalo Bills or Wink Martindale's defense? It's a little bit more complicated from a pressure standpoint and from a coverage standpoint. So my question is, I really want to see how this looks and what EB does to help him identify some of this stuff.
Yeah, that's the hard part is if you're EB, you have to kind of call a game. I would say this. My opinion is that if you're EB, you have to call a game that tries to insulate against some of that stuff. But even then, it's hard, right? You can insulate against certain coverages by calling more screens or running the football or things like that, which we know at this point they don't really want to run it. But the screen game was far more effective last week. But that stuff's really hard to block if you don't know what front they're in. If you don't know who's the Mike, the Sam, the Will. Is that guy a D lineman? Is he a linebacker? Is that the nickel or is he the free safety? Like when you got guys buzzing in, out, and around all of these positions, targeting a run, something that is very simple most weeks for relatively, by NFL standards. I'm not saying I could go out there and be like, yeah, got it.
Yeah.
But, for an NFL quarterback and an NFL center, especially one with almost 100 career starts now in Tyler Larson, that stuff's pretty simple week to week.
Yeah.
He makes it a disaster for you in this particular week. And so
it just means you have to kind of dot your I's and cross your T's. Like I remember when we played the Green Bay Packers in 2013, and they played dime to everything. And dime, there's 6 defensive backs in the field. And so all of a sudden now these runs that are, we have the Sam linebacker on this run, the tight end tackle. It's like, now who is the Sam? Because, 21 is down there, 25 is down there. One of them is a safety, one of them is a Sam linebacker. And that's to me like where your Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday prep comes into play at a super high level, especially for the center, right? When we're targeting runs, when we're targeting protections, this guy's playing linebacker in these looks, this guy's playing safety in these looks, this guy's playing defensive end in these rushing situations, or in these pass rushing situations. Let's call it accordingly. And so I think that's where it's like we'd get a sheet every Tuesday or every Wednesday, depending on which team I was on, for our blitz rules, right? And it's like on third down, these 5 numbers are now bigs. So for our protection rules, like offensive line blocks bigs plus the mic. So these are bigs. And then these are the other numbers. So you'd have to memorize those numbers each and every week and memorize who this nickels and the corners were and all that kind of stuff. So this week, that list is going to be pretty long, I would imagine. And there's going to be a lot to look at there.
And remember, this all has to happen within the 40 or 25 seconds of the play clock. So it's not you can stand up there and be like,
Well, who was that?
Who's
again?
that? Hey, was that guy big or small?
Yeah, big or small.
That'd be funny. Just Tyler Larson's going down the line of scrimmage like he's playing duck, duck, goose. Big, small.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's something to keep an eye on today. Just kind of a fun little thing is what you'll see centers do is they'll go like they'll point out big. He's a big. Number 4 is a big today. I expect you to see that a lot because that guy 4 plays linebacker for them on base downs, and then he's a pass rusher on sub downs. So he'll say that big, and then here's the mic. So you're going to see a lot of communication, I would imagine, pre-snap today from that guy.
Right. And so, New England will move it around. They'll shift it around. And obviously, offensively, we'll talk about this later, they're using motion a lot more. So they're trying to they are looking to confuse the hell out of you, no matter what side of the ball is on the field. But this is why, when you get later in your career and you've seen some of that stuff, you've played Bill Belichick 10 times in your career if you're a Peyton Manning, and Peyton still got by Belichick on a regular basis. But, you have a better chance, at least, than a guy who's seen it never. And that's what Sam Howell is facing today. If you are EB, though, and you think of a game plan, I'm going to give you about, 90 seconds to do what EB is spending all week doing here. But, like, are you willing to trust it, take some shots down the field, try to loosen them up? Are you trying to hit a lot of quick game? Are you I know you probably want to run the football a little bit more than Eric does, but what does the game plan generally look like?
So what I would say is if I'm EB, I'm trying to find formations that normalize what they do. And so what I would say to that is, for example, like West slot is one that Kyle used to use all the time. And so that's 2 tight ends to the right, kind of in a wing attachment, and then the 2 receivers are to the left. So most teams, this is back when I was playing, and this has obviously changed, but they'd say, we don't want a corner over here to the 2 tight end side. We want him over here if we're playing man to the left. So that undresses the coverage just based on formation. So I'm looking for formations like that normalize what they do. They get them out of certain checks. They get them out of certain pressure looks. Like, so for example, when we used to play the Giants, I forget who the defensive coordinator was, but if we got in 13 personnel and lined up all 3 tight ends to the right, they would check to cover 3 every single time. Mm-hmm. So we could run all of our cover 3 beaters out of that. And Belichick is, Belichick. He's really good about not doing that, but every defense has those things. And I think EB, you've seen him do this before with a lineup in empty. So 3 receivers to the left and then the back and the tight end to the right. If they're in man, you definitely don't want any corners over here to the right. Then I'm going to motion back. We're going to see what type of man coverage it is, who's got who. So I would expect to see a lot of that type of stuff if you're trying to throw the football today. And then I'd probably try to spread them out a little bit if I'm trying to run the ball. I don't want to get packed in because, again, it's like who's who. Is that guy a safety? You see a linebacker?
Get them all out of there.
Spread them out. Make that box nice and simple for Tyler Larsen. Say, oh, there's 5 guys in here. That guy's the Mike. I don't care if he's wearing 21. We're going to him, you know,
Yep.
and I think like that type of stuff is going to be looking for things to simplify what you're looking at is going to be paramount today.
No doubt. All right, Kevin Sheehan joins us next for his weekly hit. Junkies, you'll hear from them coming up at 11. It's the Take Command pregame show from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor here on a Burgundy and Gold game day. Take Command pregame show on 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980, the free Odyssey app, and streaming live on YouTube. Our pleasure now to welcome in, as we do every week at this time, our good friend Kevin Sheehan, host of the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980. Kevin, hello, sir. How are you?
Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning to you. So you were nice enough to come on my show this week. We talked about the trades there, so we won't do too much a rehash of that. Obviously, if folks want to listen, there's a podcast for that. Also, that video's on YouTube. All kinds of fun places you can find it. But as we prepare for the game this morning, Kevin, and you look at the matchup between the revamped, if you will, Commanders defense and this New England offense and Mac Jones, I kind of feel like it's the perfect launch point for them. A lot of the things that might be a little scarier without Chase and Montez aren't necessarily present today, but how do you see the matchup?
Well, first of all, I was lucky enough to have one Logan Paulsen on my show on
There
Friday,
you go.
which you can listen to at the team980.com or on any of the various places you can get our Team 980 shows. I guess today really is what everybody's talked about this week, and that is just, Sam Howell and Eric Bieniemy matching up against one of the best to ever do it from a defensive standpoint, Bill Belichick, and how much he tries to provoke or prompt, young veteran quarterbacks, let alone young quarterbacks and coordinators, into making mistakes. And it would be quite the feat to get through this day with some level of offensive competency without mistakes. Because if you have that kind of day, I think against the Patriots, you're going to have a chance to win the game because they are far from explosive themselves on offense, and they lost, Kendrick Bourne going into this game. So, yeah, it's does Sam take another step forward versus, a step back, as we've seen sort of all season long, up and down, up and down, up and down. Same with Eric Bieniemy. 1 week, brilliant game plan, brilliant play calling. But that followed, what we saw in New York against the Giants. And, these are the kinds of tests you want your young quarterback and your coordinator who's still trying to figure it out to have, especially in a season that, isn't going towards contention for anything. So this is one of those days that's, kind of for now, but it's also for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I think that's probably the thing that I'm most excited to watch. And I said as much when I was on your show. But, how does this team replace, like, Montez and Chase? And, like, what's your expectation for the defense? Do they play better? Do they play worse? Do they play the same? I know that New England offense doesn't have a lot of firepower at the moment. What's your expectation for that group?
Well, I mean, if you listen to them or if you listen to the anonymous them, it's by subtraction, getting rid of Chase Young. So I'm expecting something much better based on what they've told everybody. But no, the reality is, I think they're going to miss a really strong edge setter. Like, I think Ramondre Stevenson's actually pretty good.
Yeah, he's a good player.
The football, maybe, even though Washington's done a really good job, as bad as the defense has been, they've been excellent against the run.
Yeah.
They were last week again. And I'd like to see, the same level of run defense, because I think if they stop the run today, you've got a chance really to get after Mac Jones. But I don't know. I mean, they played well without these guys when they've been out, Logan.
Yeah.
Smith-Williams can play. I'm, excited to see, maybe F.A. a little bit more, because when we've seen him in the past, it's looked good. The guy that I really kind of liked in the preseason, I have no idea if he'll be active, but I'd love to see Andre Jones on the field. That body type is what you see more and more in the league, sort of the lanky, long, taller defensive ends in that Danielle Hunter sort of mode. And I just thought we saw a guy that looked like he had some skill and talent in the preseason, but I have no idea. They've told us that it's going to be addition by subtraction, so I'm going to judge him on that today without Chase, with Chase in particular.
Kevin Sheehan with us here on the Take Command pregame show. We definitely will see Andre Jones Jr. today. Been active on special teams, but he told John Keim in an interview this week that, my time is here. Like, it was pretty funny.
Wow.
Because Keim was like, how do you stay ready? Like when your time comes, and he's like, no, my time is here now. Like I'm playing this week.
He's confident. Doc did an interview with him during training camp.
Yeah.
It was one of these. This guy has fierce competitor, written all over him. So I'd like to see him out there. Why not?
No, for sure. And I'm excited to see KJ Henry as well, a guy they took in the 5th round that hasn't been active because he's not the special teams player that Andre Jones is, but he'll be active today. And I would imagine they try to get him at least 5-10 snaps on defense. So we'll see. On the other side of the ball, they're without Curtis Samuel today, Kevin, with the toe injury. He's quietly had a good year. Everyone was barking a couple years ago with the injury and where is this guy? They spent so much money, and it just seems like every week he's got 4 catches to 4 to 8 catches for 40 to 80 yards. He's got a touchdown every other week. But Jamison Crowder also played a little bit more last week, obviously after Curtis went out, played well. Are you concerned about a drop-off there today, especially against a New England defense where the quick passing game is probably going to be pretty important?
I mean, Crowder did a really good job. I think what maybe you lose without Samuel out there is more of the threat of a runner, whether it's, fly sweeps or just shovels or whatever. But I like Crowder, but you're right. Curtis Samuel's had a good season. I'm hopeful that Jahan Dotson can put 2 games back to back because I still think from a talent standpoint and from a playmaking standpoint, he's as good as they have. And it was obviously a frustrating start. And it would be, other than the ball that probably he should have hung on to and maybe did, although he didn't, I'd like to see him back it up today with another big game. But we'll see what Belichick decides to take away because he'll have his choice usually on what he wants to take away. Let's see if it's Terry or Dotson.
Yeah, for sure. And so the other thing I wanted to ask you about is one of the interesting kind of substitutions or actives and inactives last week was the fullback with
Alex Arma.
Alex Arma and the tight ends. What's the expectation for that group, and does that just kind of signal they're going in a different direction with Cole Turner?
I don't know. That's you'd be able to answer.
I was like, really, Logan?
I don't know.
You're going to ask about tight ends?
I like to just, I like to hear what people got to say about stuff.
Ask me about tight ends and fullbacks, but they had at least I think 2 formations that were true traditional I formations last week with the quarterback under center, and they went play action off of that. I wonder if he's able to kind of come out of the backfield and catch the ball. I have no idea what that means. You tell me.
I mean, I think it signifies they're trying to get a little bit tougher up front, and, I think Arma's a better special teams player than Cole and gives you a little bit more flexibility from a, kind of a mindset standpoint. But again, it's interesting to me that Cole, every year is so, optimistic and positive about him in training camp. We are. And then, it just never quite happens on the field, which is always tough. And it's a little disappointing for me. But, Arma's a good football player. So,
yeah.
Why do you think Rodriguez didn't get any looks last week?
That's a great question.
It seems as if they're falling in love with him a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's rightfully so that they are falling in love with him. He's an excellent football player. He runs the runs the way they want them to be run, and so it is a little surprising. I thought he was kind of tipping into that,
I mean,
5 to 8.
B-Rob had a good week last week, though. So
it's true.
And they also just didn't run the ball a lot. So there's that.
Maybe that's why, yeah.
But they haven't run the ball much at all anyway. And before he had, I think, the second most carries, and then didn't get a touch on Sunday.
Yeah, no, definitely interesting. All right, Kevin, what games do you like outside of this one today from the betting side of it?
Well, if you'd called me a little earlier, I would have given out the Chiefs-Dolphins under 52, which I'm on right now in a 7-0 game late in the second quarter. But yesterday was not a good day for me, so you should probably not listen. I like the Cowboys today to go into Philadelphia with everybody expecting Philadelphia to win at home and cover. But I also like the Cowboys when they went to San Francisco. So take that under advisement. So Dallas plus the 3. And I kind of like Buffalo tonight in a desperate spot for them with everybody kind of believing Cincinnati's, resurgent and getting ready to go on a roll. So 2 road teams to end your late afternoon and night, Dallas and Buffalo.
Anything to read into? I think sometimes we obviously can be a little optimistic about Washington. And basically Vegas is telling you this game's a pick-em with New England today, right, with New England being a 3-point favorite. Do you think that is accurate? And, are people outside of the DMV looking at this game like, wow, that's the worst game on the schedule today. Both those teams stink.
Yeah, it's not an attractive one There are a couple of others that aren't very good, like Rams, Packers without Stafford playing, Carolina, Colts. There are a couple of them. But, no, I think the line is exactly where it should be. This is probably a toss-up on a neutral field, so New England gets the 3 for being at home. And, to me, it comes down to the team that doesn't make the mistakes. Like, this is going to be one of those games that's probably more lost than won. But I'm really, really excited to see, hopefully, a follow-up performance offensively to the one we saw last week. And Logan did a really good job Friday telling me and my audience, and I'm sure he's done the same with you and on your podcast, that Philly's just more simplistic defensively, easier to sort of diagnose, and New England isn't. So if they end up having success offensively today, I think that's a big, that's progress with the quarterback and with the coordinator.
I think so too.
Yeah, for sure. And who you got? Who you taking? Will they do that?
I don't love the game either way, but I'll take Washington 24-23.
Okay.
Love it.
That feels high scoring based off of But
you get maybe a special teams touchdown. I don't know, some crazy. This feels
Belichick
like
would
a
be
messy,
so excited. That dude loves
game.
special teams so much. By the way, Bill Belichick's favorite thing in the entire world is happening today. He gets to witness a left-footed punter.
Oh, is that his favorite thing?
Oh God, he loves a left-footed punter.
Why, is that you? Are you doing a bit right
No,
now?
I'm not doing a bit.
No, he's not doing a bit at all. By the way, he'll do a whole thing on the snapper, holder, and kicker on the field goal unit. But is it really true that many in our fan base would have no interest in Bill Belichick? Is that actually, have we been traumatized that much to not even consider it?
Is it true that people in the fan base think that? Yes. Is that actually a wise idea? I would say probably not. When the best coach of all time might be an option for you, you probably should at least consider it.
It is an option. He's not. I don't think it would ever happen, but I just can't believe how many of my listeners anyway just dismissed it as, oh my God, no, he's nothing. He actually isn't very good since Brady left, so we wouldn't want him here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I would say this: if you got to give him personnel control and everything, I don't know that I'm not interested in that, and that might be what it takes.
Agreed.
But if he can just come coach the team and set you up for the future, sure, come on down, Bill. I'm never carrying a live press conference on my show again, but I'll deal with those problems then. Kevin Sheehan with us 10:30 a.m. each and every Sunday, and then 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. during the week on the Team 980, the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast. Always fantastic as well. Kevin, enjoy the games today. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys. I enjoy it as always.
Thanks, Kev.
Kevin Sheehan with us. We get back. Quick thought. Well, actually, let me tell you what. We weren't going to talk about that story today, but we got like 3 minutes to do something. We'll talk about that Belichick rumor next. Take Command pregame show here on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan. It's a Burgundy and Gold game day. Of course, Burgundy and Gold game day live. The in-game show with Denton Day and Linnell Willingham follows us coming up at 1 p.m. You can have them on your free Odyssey app, for instance, while you watch the game. Great way to follow along, get instant analysis, call in at halftime, all those things. We still got plenty of show here left before we are done for the day. We, of course, if you're new to the program, Craig Hoffman, that's me. Logan Paulsen, that is him. And that includes the Sports Junkies checking in with us at 11, so just under 10 minutes from now. But Logan, there was a rumor that came out this week. We weren't going to really talk about it, but we got kind of a small segment here. We went a little long with Kevin to do this. So I think it's like an interesting thought exercise, I guess is how I'll put it. Josh Harris would be interested in Bill Belichick if he was available and if they decide to move on from Ron Rivera. And all of a sudden you're getting into this gigantic if game, and I realize that's your least favorite thing to do on the entire planet. But the idea of like Belichick coming into to your organization after 25 years in New England, like I think we agree that we wouldn't want to necessarily just give him the entire thing if that's what it took. But like I do think people are being a little bit quick to dismiss it because he is Bill Belichick. Yeah,
and I think, there is this reputation that he is tied to Tom Brady, and their legacies will forever be tied together.
Sure.
But I do think one of the things that sticks out about him as a coach and his philosophy is that he's a brilliant defensive mind. And I think, one of the things that I respect about him is that offensively, for a long time, he was able to find guys that embodied his philosophy, heavy run, play action teams that were balanced. I think there's a lot of value there, especially when you're pushing in the playoffs. So even though he's got some maybe more traditional ideas when it comes to offensive football, I do think there has been some, a very consistent thought process there in conjunction with a philosophy defensively that is dominant. So I think there's a lot of benefits there. You mentioned he's 71 years old. Is he maybe past his prime? Maybe. But if he comes in for an interview, I'm definitely going to have him sit down and listen to what he's got to say. Like, I think if I'm Josh Harris, I'm going to kind of leave no stone unturned. I want to make sure this is the right hire. I want to kind of go the way the Pittsburgh Steelers have gone and hire the right guy. For years, for decades.
Isn't Mike Tomlin like the third coach they've had since 1960 or something like that?
Absolutely, and it's because they're very fastidious with the process. And I think the only way you're fastidious is you're not worried about hiring the big name, but you're worried about hiring the right guy. So with regards to Bill Belichick, if he's the right guy, I'm not saying he is or isn't, but if he's the right guy, then I would definitely interview and hire him if I felt he was the right person for what I wanted for my team. Another guy that I think is interesting is like Jim Harbaugh. I think, obviously he's going through all that stuff in Michigan, but I think everywhere he's been, he's established a winning culture. Now, both of those guys have a reputation of being kind of unusual personalities, in terms of very kind of austere, strict people. Does that play in today's NFL, with all this NAIL kind of college athletes, kind of their own industry kind of thing coming out? I don't know, and I think that's a conversation that is definitely worth having when it comes to making that kind of hire. But again, they're good football coaches, and I want good football coaches, guys that have done it. They're proven winners, and I think both those guys would fit that bill. So for me, I interview them, and if the interview isn't what I want, then I don't hire them. But I definitely have interest in one of the best football coaches of all time. If he supposedly is interested in the Washington Commanders.
Right, and to Belichick's side of it, he's got strong connections to the area. With his dad being at Navy forever, I do think that he is a historian of the game, and he realizes that this fan base is kind of that sleeping giant that we've seen at times really wake up this year around the sale and around some other key moments of the season. So I do think for Belichick, like, this would be a place that is pretty interesting. But at the end of the day, I also wonder, like, young quarterback, if Sam is your guy, do you want to keep some level of continuity, and thus do you go someone, whether it's EB or someone else, kind of off that Andy Reid tree, or at least someone who will hire an offensive coordinator off of that Andy Reid tree? Do you really want Sam having to play in his third different offense in 3 seasons?
Assuming Sam's the guy.
Assuming Sam's the guy, right?
Which I think we are. We'll see, but I think it's
this
trending
is the fun
in that
of doing
direction.
this for 3 minutes on November 5th as opposed to doing this when it actually matters at the end of the season. But I think there's a lot of questions, and I've always said like a guy like Ben Johnson with the Lions, like obviously is going to be one of the hot names. Bobby Slowick, your coach, who's now the OC in Houston.
Frank Smith, man, that's a guy that I got a ton of respect for. Frank Stevens, excuse me. He's the OC down in Miami right now.
Yeah,
and I think all those guys are kind of hot, exciting names. So yeah, those are kind of the way that the most recent hirings around the NFL have gone, but also there's the historic hires, the guys that, the Harbaughs, the Belichicks, those types of guys too. And so I think there's merit to both, and I don't think there's...
If I'm Harris and his team, I want to interview all of them. 100%. I want to see the difference. I want to see
what it looks like.
What a Bill Belichick interview looks like. Although if I'm Belichick, I'm like, I'm not interviewing. Here's my resume. Call me if you want me.
I'm interviewing, though. Sorry, bud.
Yeah, sorry. Then we're not interested. you're too good for this already.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe you got 8 rings. Whatever. We'll figure it out.
I mean, at least maybe interview is the wrong word, but I want to sit down and talk with you.
Yeah.
Before it happens.
For sure.
This hypothetical thing that's happening on November, whatever day it is.
Yeah, November 5th. Here we are, keeping an eye on the Chiefs and Dolphins. Chiefs just got a defensive touchdown off a Tyreek Hill fumble.
And kind of a scoop, lateral.
Yeah, scoop, pitch, and score.
Yeah.
That's the Dolphins were on the edge of field goal range. So instead of 14-3 or better going into the half for Miami, being down by that, they're going to be down likely 21-0 at halftime over in Germany. So that's the early game. We'll go around the NFL coming up at 11:30, preview the rest of the day's action. But next, more thoughts on Patriots and Commanders with the Sports Junkies, who join us next. Take Command pregame show live on a burgundy and gold game day from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, where the doors are open. Looks like the first beer has been poured over there at the bar, Logan.
Nice.
And folks are starting to come in and get ready for the 1 o'clock slate. Of course, there is a game to watch now. The Dolphins and Chiefs.
There we go.
Over in Germany. The Patriots are in New England. They're going to play the Commanders in a little bit.
We're talking about the Patriots.
We're going to talk about all that over the next 2 hours of our 3-hour show.
That's
1 hour.
Heck of an intro right there.
In the books. I'm Craig Hoffman, a radio professional. Logan Paulsen there. He played as a football professional for 10 years in the NFL, and now he's stuck sitting next to me. The Sports Junkies, they've been doing the whole radio thing for about 25 years every week during the pregame show. At this time, we get to hear from them. So, JP and company, take it away with your thoughts on the game.
All right, boys, another Sunday.
All right, you're up.
Another Sunday where the Commanders are coming off a loss. This one was
So that's the Junkies' take on the game. A bit all over the place, Logan. They've
Yeah.
never been like that before. They're always very tight and organized. 4 men, been doing it together for 25 years, always on the exact same page. I think the whether the game's past Belichick by that stuff is that's certainly a
I really
conversation.
I really think that's more of a personnel thing. I think
Yeah.
he's still trying to make a team like Tom Brady's his quarterback. I really think that's what's going on. I think
Let's talk about that then, and we'll talk about the thing I want to talk about later because I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I really believe that, like, when you look at the roster, like, when Tom Brady was the quarterback, he could bring in anybody at receiver and almost anybody on offensive line, and Tom Brady would elevate. He was excellent to get the ball out of his hands quickly. He understood how to, like, find good matchups. They had 2 pretty good offensive coordinators. Mike McDaniel was there.
Josh McDaniels.
Josh McDaniel, excuse me. And
Good OC, bad head coach.
yeah, and I think, like, that all is relevant to this, because, like, when you have a guy, maybe the best quarterback of all time, like, he elevated everybody. And, like, Belichick has continued to kind of bargain bin shop at positions of value in hopes that the quarterback will elevate. But now that philosophy, in my opinion, needs to switch. It needs to go from quarterback elevating skill position guys to skill positions elevating a young quarterback, offensive line elevating a young quarterback. And it looked like they were heading in that direction the one year they kind of spent all that money in free agency with
Hunter Henry and all those guys.
But like, you didn't invest at positions of traditional value. You invested at tight end, which is not a position of value, right? Like, you need to invest at who's your number one receiver? Like, go get DeAndre Hopkins or Devontae Adams, whoever it is. Go make that investment for a young player so he has a safety net. And I think that's, like, when you look at the roster, like, defensively, I think they're pretty talented. I think they've got some good pieces over there.
Although some of their best pieces are out today, like
100%.
Matthew Judon, which is very helpful for Washington.
And Christian Gonzalez is also out. But, yeah, so I think they've done a good job of staying consistent on defense, but they haven't really had to change defensively who they are. They value position flexibility. They value guys with multiple skill set. They value smart players because it allows them to play this really complicated defense. Offensively, I think, is where it's fallen down a little bit. Mm-hmm. You got to say, hey, man, get out of this idea that Tom Brady's back there saving you from everything. And he's a smart guy. He knows that. But I think you haven't seen a change in how he evaluates personnel and who he seeks and who he tries to bring in. I think that's the thing that I look at this team. I'm like, because I think, say what you want. I think the offensive line's pretty talented, but it's not an elite group. And so they're made to look worse a little bit by Mac Jones.
For sure. And I think what's interesting, you look at the Belichick years, the most important person not named Tom Brady might have been their O-line coach, Dante Scarnecchia.
Oh, 100%.
And
1,
he left for like 2 years, and they fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
And then he came back, and they were good, and he retired, I think, when Brady left, and it just hasn't been the same since. So, a good position coach can elevate a group, and maybe that's part of it.
We see that around the league, too.
Yeah, maybe that's been part of it for them offensively as well. I do want to get into kind of, like we always hear, it's kind of most people are like the Reed tree of West Coast offense, the Shanahan tree of West Coast offense, or like the Eric Coryell. And then there's like this Belichick thing that Josh McDaniels and Bill O'Brien and these other guys do that's like over here, and I don't really know what it is. So I'm going to have you explain that to me later on in the show. Coming up next, though, is Tail of the Tape on the Commanders side of it. They finally found some of the things that we've been looking for last week. Can they repeat it again? A closer look at how the Commanders performed offensively against the Eagles and what we can take out of it next. It is the Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day. It's the Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day. 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980. We're live at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Come hang out with us starting at 11 o'clock each and every Commanders game day. Although, Logan, in a couple weeks we got Seattle, so that'll be a 4 o'clock game. We're 3 hours before kickoff. So we here 1 o'clock that day, which would be kind of fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you told me that. I would have been here at 10. Just hanging out.
You just would have been hanging out,
Just
watching
hanging out.
maybe.
Just be like, where's Craig?
I'd be like, I'm at home. I'll be there at 1 o'clock.
Well, thanks for telling me.
You're welcome. I think you probably would have figured it out that week.
Well, we talk almost every day, so you would have told me at some point.
Yeah. Hey, Logan, reminder, the West Coast game is they don't start at 10 a.m.
That's correct.
Pacific time.
Yeah. That's
So,
good. That's good insight.
Yeah, that's what you get from this show. Time and math. No, actually, it's very specifically, you don't get math from this show. If you listen to our podcast, you know that. All right, here's what you do get. Tape breakdowns. The Commanders last week were able to unlock parts of their offense that we've been waiting to see. Quick game was definitely more heavily involved. Screen game, more heavily involved. And it seemed to really get Sam Howell going and led to his best performance as a pro, statistically speaking, threw for nearly 400 yards. So, how/why was that able to work? And is that something that is specific to the matchup against Philadelphia, where he's had probably his 2 best games of the year? That half against Denver was pretty good, too. Or is that something that he can actually take and repeat, and that Eric Bieniemy can take and repeat today against New England?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about some really high-level stuff about what we need to, what I would like to see, in terms of formations, in terms of simplifying pictures. Because when you look at this last game against Philly, the simpler the picture, the more effective Sam is. And I think, like you said, EB was able to call a game that was very effective at getting the ball out of Sam's hand quickly. 2.3 seconds to throw. That's the lowest time to throw that he's had his entire career. So great job, EB. But a little bit of that comes from the idea that you know what they're going to be. And, hey, on the quick game, I can confidently deliver this slant because I know they're in man. And I know there's going to be a void here in the defense. Like, for example, I think it was the first play of the game. They've got 2 receivers to the left, tight end to the right. The back's offset to the tight end side and gun. They kind of bubble the back out, and Nakobe Dean matches the back, and there's this huge void in the middle of the field. And it's like the easiest slant throw you ever see, right? And so that's the power offensively of understanding what they're in defensively, what they're trying to do, right? Oh, they're bringing a pressure on third down. Let's just check to a screen. And I thought they did a good job of letting Sam have more autonomy at the line of scrimmage. Like, let him call stuff, let him check to stuff. And I thought that was great.
That was a huge difference last week.
Yeah.
I don't remember ever seeing him really have that kind of power. And even sometimes it wasn't necessarily call, but it was like Sam calling it, I should say. It allowed Sam to make decisions at the line of scrimmage. There's one play that was a called run, but they had a smoke screen alert.
Yep.
And Sam sees the corners 10 yards off of Terry McLaurin. He just stands up, slings the ball out to Terry, and Terry gets 7-8 yards. And that's way better than your run play is probably going to get.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the thing that is awesome about playing a defense where you know what's happening. And so what I would say is this week, and I've already said it, is how do you ensure you know what they're doing? And it's going to be much more challenging this week. It's going to be much more of a Pandora's box of opportunity and different looks. And you don't want Sam checking the stuff versus the bad looks because they're giving you wrong looks. They're showing man, but they're really playing cover 2. You're going to see a lot of that this week. So to me, again, can you find formations? Can you find personnel groupings? Can you find shifts and motions that regulate what they do defensively a little bit so you can get this confident version of Sam? So you can get Sam walking the line of scrimmage like he did versus Philly. He checks to a pass play because it's man. He throws a slant to Logan Thomas. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. You know what I'm saying? So looking for stuff like that. And the problem is that is simple in terms of articulating it. It's complex in terms of execution because of, as we've talked about, the many, many layers, this crazy wedding cake of Bill Belichick defense.
So it's not as easy as just EB calling more plays with a 3-step drop.
Correct.
So what happens, so people understand, right? Like, what happens, EB calls the double slant, it calls the whatever concept you want to pick that's like a 3-step ball out, and you do it into the wrong look.
So, yeah, I think that's a really great example. So most times you'll have so, for example, they did a lot of stick concepts, so 5-yard out by the tight end, flat by the other tight end if they're in a wing look, and then they have 2 slants on the backside. So I would call that stick dragon, or stick lion, excuse me. And so, obviously, I want to work the lion concept versus specific looks, like pretty good versus cover 2, right? Because it's going to pull the hook player out. The outside slant beats the flat player, right? And then you've got a nice window there. great job. If I work the stick side versus cover 2, I'm going to kill my tight end because I'm throwing it to the out, right?
Right.
But
and
if it's
that outside flat player is going to come in and good
but
night.
But if it's cover 3, I'd much rather work the slant side because there's going to be a hook player that's buzzing into that second slant window if I'm working the slant side, right? So even just that kind of understanding, hey, this versus cover 2 we're here, versus cover 3 we're here, versus quarters we want this. That's layered. So versus Philly, it was like, is it man or is it cover 3? And I can work the slant pretty much versus both if I really, really want to, if the slants are run effectively, right? So here we're going to get it's going to stack, right? We're going to get some cover 2, we're going to get some quarters, going to get some cover 6, and we're going to get some man coverage. We're going to get some zeros. So identifying pre-snap where that's got to go is going to be a huge deal, even on something as simple as 3-step drop.
There you go. And then we talked about this a little bit earlier in the show, but assuming most people listening now weren't with us at 10 a.m., the screen game was another facet of things that got going really well for them last week. But there are, and that feels like it should be, that's coverage proof, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if they're running cover 2, cover 3, just call the screen. Why is it so hard against New England with how they mix and match their personnel and their fronts and their formations?
It is challenging just from a strictly identification standpoint. Who am I going to in the screen? That's not a big deal, but it is an issue. I think the thing is that sometimes they're hyper aggressive. New England, when you're watching them, they're very blitz happy. They're very aggressive. Obviously, want to run screens into that look. Other times they're not very aggressive and they're very passive and they kind of sit back with eyes to the backfield and they're just going to run right to the screen for a tackle for loss. So that is something that I'd say you got to kind of maybe get in a rhythm a little bit, get them moving around, get them looking at different stuff so they're not keying as effectively as they are in certain situations. So that's why this defense is going to be. I'm so excited to watch today what EB comes up with, what Sam does, because there is so many different layers to it, right? Like the Philly game, awesome. Sam's at the line of scrimmage looking confident, checking the ball, delivering the ball confidently, the touchdown to Terry, right? You ran all this quick game stuff early on. The corner jumps kind of a little stutter step by Terry over the top, touchdown. Great. Plays are well layered, awesome. Can you even get to that layering if Sam is so befuddled? And I'm not saying Sam's an NFL quarterback, so he should be able to figure it out. But that's something that, again, is going to be so compelling to watch is what do they do to make it easier for Sam to see? How do they find him easy throws? How do they get him in a rhythm offensively? What does that look like? Do they run the ball a little bit more today? Maybe. I don't know. So there's a million.
We keep saying that we would, and then Eric keeps not. Sam still leads the NFL in passing attempts and dropbacks, and the good news is he's been productive in a lot of ways. He actually leads the NFL in passing yards, but that's because he's passed the ball more than everybody else in the league.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, it's been effective in certain situations. Like last week, for example, they're backed up. They run 2 drop-back passes on the 1-yard line, and they're able to find a completion to Jahan. Fantastic job. Love that aggressive nature. But how do you ensure the confident throws, the confident delivery in a passing game where the coverages are going to be a little different? And you are going to have good matchups. They do play a little bit of man coverage, New England. And, obviously J.C. Jackson's a good football player, but I like Terry in that matchup. I like Jahan in that matchup. So can you exploit those? Can you identify when they're in man to exploit that matchup? And again, those are things that I think are super interesting about this matchup. And to me, it's such a pivotal game. I know this is a game versus 2 teams that aren't very good, but if Sam comes out and plays well, this is going to be a definitive answer for me that he is the guy kind of thing.
Right.
That's how I feel about it.
He has not played a game against a defense like this well yet.
Right.
His good games have come against simpler defenses. Some good defenses, but not one that presents this kind of challenge. So we'll see what Sam Howell can do today. Logan Paulsen there, Craig Hoffman here. Here for us is MGM National Harbor. We're inside Tap Sports Bar where you can come hang out with us. Not just up to the game. I mean, we're going to go home or you're going to go to the park and watch the game.
Yep.
Because you got the post game after. And then after Logan finishes one post game, he does a second one with me, the Take Command post game show, about 90 minutes after the final whistle. That is live on YouTube. But we are here at Tap Sports Bar. They got the Chiefs-Dolphins game on. Obviously, all the rest of the games are on throughout the afternoon. So come hang out, get ready for the game with us, then take a watch for Commanders and Patriots here at Tap Sports Bar. When we get back, we'll go around, speaking of the rest of the games, around the NFL.
Love it.
Talk about the rest of the games. Some really good ones on the docket today. That's next. 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980. This is the Take Command pregame show. Take Command pregame show here on a burgundy and gold game day. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen. Logan, I feel like every segment we get farther and farther apart,
sorry,
which is only a problem because we're on a camera. We stream live on YouTube, and now you're seeing Logan and I adjust our chairs. I'm like, I swear to God I set this up well. And then here we are. Now look at us, beautifully framed here on YouTube. You can subscribe at the Team 980 and at 1067 The Fan on the Fans page is where you get full episodes of the Take Command podcast, my radio show, The Hoffman Show, 4 to 7. On the Team 980, streams live all 3 hours on 980's YouTube page as well. So great stuff, both places. Make sure you are subscribed if you are a YouTube user. And if you want to become one, it's very, very easy. Just, go on the internet and go to YouTube and off you go. It's really, quite frankly, that simple. All right, so, Logan, this is the part of the show where we take a quick break from Commanders and Patriots and go around the NFL. And, we typically just pull up the schedule and do that. We could do it a different way. We could just look at the TVs here at Tap Sports Bar and be like, let's talk about that game.
Yeah.
They do have the logos
Lots
up
of
to
games,
know
yeah.
where you need to sit when you come in. If you're, a Falcons fan, you want to sit over there in that back corner where the Falcons-Vikings game is. But it's probably easier for me to stay organized if I just pull up the old scoreboard on ESPN.com and go from there. And Chris, back in studio, we can go ahead and hit our music here as we go around the league, our scoreboard music, if you will. Dolphins and Chiefs, thoughts on this game? 21-0 Kansas City, heck of a bounce-back game after they played their worst game. I don't know if it's just this season, but maybe in a couple of years last week. Losing to the lowly Denver Broncos.
It's why you play the games, and I think it's really interesting because you would have thought, the Chiefs are going to come out and have this dominant offensive performance, but actually they've been kind of middling offensively, and they had that great defensive touchdown right before half. So you never know how it's going to go. They seem to, and the thing about this Chiefs team I love is their defense is playing lights out every single week, and so maybe this is the formula for them. Kind of play okay offensively until they get, until they find that elite kind of offensive production that they were accustomed to seeing from them. But their defense is playing really well. So,
all right. Speaking of, though, that Falcons-Vikings game that you can watch over there in that corner, that is the first game I've got up on my list here. Falcons 3.5-point favorites at home. Taylor Heineke starting, but this is not a matchup of former Washington quarterbacks, as Kirk Cousins, sadly, our best to Kirk, in his recovery, out for the season following the torn Achilles. Such a bummer because Minnesota really turned it around.
Yeah.
They're back to 4-4. They'd undoubtedly be favored in this game if they had Cousins. But instead, you got a rookie playing quarterback. They traded for Josh Dobbs to back him up this week. Poor Josh Dobbs doesn't know which way is up. He's on his third team this season.
Crazy.
So what are your thoughts on this one, Heineke getting the start for Atlanta at home?
I mean, obviously, I always love watching the Falcons. They've got all those kind of crazy, unique playmakers, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. So can't wait to see that and see if Heineke can kind of unlock some of that with a little bit of YOLO.
Yeah. London not playing today.
Oh, that's a bummer, man.
That stinks for Taylor.
Yeah, but, and what's Taylor do in terms of handling the pressure that Minnesota's defense seems to consistently bring? They lead the league in terms of defensive pressure. And then can Minnesota have any kind of semblance of offensive production to help kind of support the defense? Because I do think Atlanta will score some points today. And can they make Taylor Heineke look silly? So I think the spread is correct because it's in Atlanta, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be a close game and one that, might not be the best game of all time, but I think it'll be fun to watch because they've got some interesting pieces there.
Yeah, Brian Flores has done a good job turning that Minnesota defense around. It's taken him a couple weeks, but they were the worst defense, or one of the worst defenses in the league last year.
Yep.
So he's started to figure some things out. I feel for Kevin, too, O'Connell, as the head coach. I remember talking to Kevin in that 2019 season, and he just looked at me and he'd go, hey, man, if I'm a D coordinator on another team, I look at us and I'm like, what do we have to game plan for? Jordan Reed was out. Obviously as that season went, it's like, you know what? The answer is probably this Terry McLaurin kid.
Yeah.
He seems pretty good. That was Terry's rookie year, of course, but quarterbacks, your top weapons, they all go out, and it just becomes so much easier to game plan for. And without Kirk, without JJ, with the hamstring injury, it's just Kevin probably feels like he's right back here where he's trying to figure out a scheme where, there's going to be coverages that aren't pushed towards one side. You can't take advantage and manipulate and dictate in the way you can when you have a star player. So that's a rough go for him. All right, next up on our list here, Cardinals and Browns. The former Josh Dobbs Team Bowl. Browns going to have Deshaun Watson back. We'll see if he survives the game. Last time he started, he didn't get very far. But that shoulder apparently finally back in good shape. The Cardinals are starting Clayton Tune, And as I said when we talked about this game during the week, Logan, if you got Myles Garrett on one side and Clayton Tune on the other, I'm going to take the Myles Garrett side.
Well, Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith. They've got an excellent defense, the best statistical defense in the NFL at the moment against a young quarterback, against an offensive line that's just it's fine. It's definitely trending in the right direction, but just okay. I think that's Cleveland all day, baby.
Yeah, 13-point favorites at home. That's a big number.
That is a big number.
But we'll see what they can do. This game's such a bummer. It's a LaFleur Bowl.
Yeah.
You got Mike and Matt, OC, head coach, going against each other. Obviously, Sean McVay, the head coach for the Rams, taking on one of his great friends, the Green Bay LaFleur. So this game not going to have Matthew Stafford. Likely that is the word from Adam Schefter. We should actually have the official word on that in a moment. I'll have to check the who's in, who's out list. We also have that list for the Commanders. We will get to that coming up at 11:45. But Green Bay's really struggled in a way that I did not anticipate. LaFleur's such a good coach. Jordan Love early in the season looked like they were onto something with him, and it just hasn't worked for them this year.
I think it's one of the challenges of having young quarterbacks. Young quarterbacks playing football, and then young quarterbacks with a bunch of young skill position guys. Like that offense just doesn't seem to quite get in sync. I think I mentioned this on the podcast or on one of the shows I did. Every single one of their skill position players outside of the running back room is a first or second year player.
Yeah.
So it's just going to be tough. Their O-line's banged up. Like that. Talk about you feel bad for Minnesota. Feel bad for Green Bay also. They've got a lot of adversity that they're dealing with from a play calling standpoint. And who's starting the quarterback for the Rams?
That is a great question. I'm trying to remember who it is, actually.
Is it Stetson Bennett? Because that'd be fun.
No, it's not Stetson Bennett. I think he actually got hurt in the preseason.
Oh, did
he? It's Brett Rippon.
Brett Rippon. Look at that guy.
There you go.
So
Mark's nephew.
I think this might be a get-right game for Green Bay. But, again, they've had a tough go. Rams have had a tough go.
Yeah, and this is one of those games where you wonder if Sean does something rather dramatic from a game planning standpoint. Do they run the ball 35 times? Which is not in Sean's nature, but
he'll do it.
He will, and that is something I've always respected about Sean. Is sometimes he would just be like, you want to know what? Screw it.
Yeah.
We can't do this, so we're going to do that.
Yep.
And that could be an interesting thing to watch today. Bears and Saints expected to have Justin Fields back, but also the debut of Montez Sweat, the newly paid Montez Sweat in Chicago. But this one in New Orleans. New Orleans 9.5-point favorites down there at the Superdome.
That feels right to me because, again, watching them last week, New Orleans, they have so many playmakers. It's just about whether Carr can kind of unlock that group. And I think that defense is probably top 5 defense in the NFL going against the Bears, who are not that, you know what I'm saying, offensively or defensively. I think Montez is a great addition for them, but I think that's going to be New Orleans all day.
Next up on our watch party list here today, Seahawks and Ravens. This is probably the best game of the early window. This one's in Baltimore.
Nice.
Seahawks have been
game.
playing really well. Baltimore obviously 6-2. This game could be over by 3:45 with as much as these teams run it.
Yeah.
But who do you like in this one?
I mean, obviously the Ravens aren't running it as much as they have historically run it, but still I think they're top 3 in terms of rush attempts in the NFL. They definitely run the football a ton. Obviously, I don't know, man. Geno Smith is such an anomaly to me because he makes big mistakes, but he also makes huge plays, and he's got all those dynamic playmakers there. Jackson Smith and Jigma, the rookie at Ohio State's playing much better. Kind of showed up last week. I think he had 5 or 6 catches for 70-ish yards. So nice day for him. But yeah, I think this is a fun game because both these teams are trending in the right direction. They're well-coached football teams. Obviously, I want to see a little bit more consistency from Baltimore, especially from Lamar Jackson. There's times where stretches this year where he's been statistically playing like the best quarterback in football. Then he'll have a little bit of a regression, then back to it. Can he kind of be that, A-plus guy for the rest of the season? I think that'll be really interesting.
By the way, quick correction. Apologies. Hopefully no one rushed and did anything drastic on their fantasy lineups. Fields likely out today. It was listed as doubtful. So late in the week, things did not look good for him. But they play on Thursday night again. He's likely going to be back for that in the previous game that we talked about. Bucks and Texans. Houston started so well on a bit of a slide. They get Carolina their first win last week.
Yep.
Bucks also started well on a bit of a slide. Which one of these teams can snap out of said slide?
I don't know. I don't really care about this game that much. I mean, it's one of those games where, obviously I want to see the young quarterback Stroud for Texans. Want to see him.
Play.
Is Baker Mayfield back? Kind of. Is he a
back to what? Is always the
back
question.
to like a starting caliber NFL player. because they do have some talent on those teams, and surprisingly, the Texans defense I think is playing really well. They're kind of starting to come together. Great job, D'Amico Ryan's there, but again, I think the team I tune in to watch is the Texans. They got all these guys: Nico Collins, the corner, Tank Dell, the slot receiver, young quarterback, offensive line's gelling well. But can they get off this slide? Is it for real? Bobby Slowick. Getting those guys playing better football. And I guess the Bucs, Bucs used to be my favorite team in football back when they were winning Super Bowls with Mike Allstott and all those guys. And
I stumbled across a Mike Allstott highlight reel the other
crazy.
day. And I was like, I'm not watching. Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
And it was 2 minutes of him just running people over.
Yeah. And, statistically, never had a great year, Mike Allstott, but obviously had those dominant physical runs. But, yeah, Mike Evans is a guy that I'm a big fan of, but is he hurt? He had tweaked his hamstring a couple weeks ago.
Great question, Logan.
But yeah, so – not for me. This game's kind of meh, but there are some things to watch. I think that are exciting. Looks like he's going to play.
Evans good to go for Tampa. Colts and Panthers, the Frank Reich Bowl. Reich's first visit, or first, I guess he's hosting. This one is in Carolina against his former team. I think this could be not a get-right game for the Colts, but definitely a week where some of the things that really bug them, a.k.a. Gardner Minshew's turnover problem, should not be as impactful against the Carolina defense. It's not that good. But Carolina is coming off their first win. They did change over the play caller duties from Reich to Thomas Brown. They were able to ride that to a win last week. But I think Indy can go on the road to Charlotte and handle their business today.
I think so, too. But I'm just so disappointed. Every time I see the Colts, I'm like, I want to see Anthony Richardson play football because they have all these kind of unique playmakers offensively. They got Jonathan Taylor. They got Pittman. They've got the kid from Cincinnati. I forget his name. But, all these kind of unique playmakers. And I just want to see the offense as it's going to look with Anthony Richardson there. Obviously, you mentioned Gardner Minshew. He's turning the football over at an unprecedented rate right now in terms of turnover-worthy plays as PFF. He's leading by 10, and he's started not the fewest games, but he started a third of the games than most of the other guys. So crazy statistics there. But yeah, I think Bryce Young, I'm always interested to see. That offense is tough to watch though because not a lot of playmakers supporting him there. But, how does his development go? Ike Ekwonu, the left tackle for the Carolina Panthers, first-round pick last year, struggling in pass pro. Can he figure it out? It's interesting in these games with the teams that aren't kind of in it. You're kind of always projecting and looking at each game as what they're going to be next year.
For sure. Giants and Raiders, both in that category as well.
Yeah.
2-6 Giants going to Las Vegas. First game post-firing of Josh McDaniel. Antonio Pierce gets the head coaching job.
Good for Antonio Pierce.
Their quarterback coach is going to be the OC. Aiden O'Connell is starting.
Yeah, great mustache.
This seems like a game where I think the Giants can put it on him. Not put it on him because offensively they don't have enough, but this could be an ugly game.
Who's starting for the Giants?
I think DJ is back.
Is he? Okay.
I think when we picked this game on Friday on the radio show, I said conditionally, if DJ plays, give me the Giants. If he doesn't, but I just look at on the week you fire your offensive coordinator and head coach, and by the way, your Josh McDaniel was your de facto offensive coordinator, and you fire the actual offensive coordinator, I believe, and elevate the QB coach. You start a rookie quarterback, and you got to go against Wink's defense.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying they shouldn't have done it. But, oh, my God, that is a long week.
This game might be 0-0, potentially. I don't know. Is Tommy DeVito starting for the Giants? Because that would be amazing. That would be an amazing
I don't think we have
game.
official word yet.
Yeah,
but DJ he should be good.
Okay. If he's good, then I think I'd give it to the Giants just because he's got more experience. And, I really wanted to see this offense with more Tyrod Taylor, honestly. I think he unlocked a lot of what they were doing down the field, and the offense looked better. Maybe Daniel Jones saw that for a couple weeks and says, I can do some of that stuff. But I do think in terms of in terms of psychological positioning, the Giants have to be licking their chops about this game.
Tell you what, let's take a quick break, come back, take a look at some of these other primetime games. We got 3 good ones still to talk about, including NFC East rivals, Cowboys and Eagles. We'll do that next. The Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day. Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold game day. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen. We have the inactive report from New England in just a moment. And interesting stuff for sure. First, though, officially speaking, thanks to our sponsor, we have the injury report brought to you by the Centers for Advanced Orthopedics. More physicians, more locations, more advanced care centered on one thing. You visit CFAortho.com. The big injury today in terms of starters is Curtis Samuel. He is out with a toe injury. Jamison Crowder expected to start in his place. Obviously, De'Ami Brown will get some more run. Ricky Stromberg also injured. But we'll see Alex Arma up again today. So we talked about that impact earlier. He's officially on the 53 and good. But Cole Turner's also active today. Curtis Hodges is the only tight end who is inactive. Other inactives, Tariq Castro-Fields, which means Christian Holmes is back today. Stromberg is mentioned. And then they interestingly brought up Alex Akimbulu and Nolan Laufenberg from the practice squad, but they're both inactive. So they only have 8 linemen healthy, and then you got Mitchell Tinsley, who we thought might be active with Samuel out, but he's also inactive today. So we'll talk about some of the machinations of how Washington can line it up at the top of the hour based off all that. But Logan, quickly to wrap up our thoughts on some of the other games around the league. Cowboys and Eagles today in the NFC East. What a game this should be.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch this football game. I think, obviously the Cowboys, for whatever reasons, have been a little bit streaky. Bad losses bad, good wins very, very good. And the Eagles are kind of the opposite, just incredibly consistent, and they seem to be trending, if anything, in the right in a more positive direction. Defensively, can they slow down Dallas? I don't know. And then can Dallas slow down what they do in terms of the offense for Philly? Because I think when you look at how the team Philly struggled most against this year was the Jets, and they play a very similar, not philosophical similarity to the Jets, but in terms of kind of style, in terms of fast, aggressive, very complicated coverage structure, or very complicated disguises to simple coverage structures. I think there's a lot of similarities there, so maybe they can find something there and slow Jalen Hurts down and slow this running game down for Philly. And that would be. I'm really excited to watch that game, obviously because it's in the division, but also because I think it's two really good football teams. So
that definitely the game of the day at 4:25, and then you got a good one tonight in Cincinnati, Bills and Bengals. You have to say it. The last time these two teams met in Cincinnati was the DeMar Hamlin game last year. Hamlin not expected to play tonight. He's been inactive most of the year on the roster for Buffalo, but he's like their 4th or 5th safety and is inactive, and that is expected to be the case tonight. But Bengals trend in the right direction. Bills kind of trend in the wrong way. Can the Bills, with their backs against the wall, do enough? My prediction is no. I think Burrow and company has figured this thing out offensively. The Bills' troubles are on that side of the ball, and it's really going to come down week to week for Buffalo if Josh Allen can make enough magic happen to keep up with what their defense is going to inevitably give up the rest of the year.
You got a Bills fan in here. What I'd say is that I think the Bengals, for whatever reason, I think it's definitely tied to Joe Burrow and how effective he looked last weekend against San Francisco. San Francisco made the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott, look silly, and they've played pretty well defensively throughout the year, but Burrow just was Joe Burrow. So obviously the Bills are a little bit banged up in the secondary, and I think Joe Burrow is going to be able to take advantage of that. So, obviously you never count Josh Allen out in terms of his high upside play, but I think in terms of consistency and someone that I think is kind of trending in the right direction, like you said, I'd say Bengals all day.
But for our Bills fan here, just remember, nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo
Bills. There we go.
Chargers and Jets is the Monday nighter. Jets 4-3 on the season. They've really kind of righted the ship as Zach Wilson figures out how to do this quarterbacking thing. But the Chargers are way better to me than their 3-4 record. They have lost a ton of close games against really, really good teams. They show you who they are last week, smashing the Bears.
Yeah, well, they should smash the Bears.
For sure. But can they go into New York and win on the road on a Monday night?
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be really compelling because I think, that Jets defense is the thing that's driving the party there, and they every week just play good football, and they are kind of harkening back to a time when defenses kind of won championships, and they're really letting Zach Wilson be the passenger there. And obviously Justin Herbert and the LA Chargers are a very dynamic football team. They have a ton of playmakers, but I don't think they've played a defense quite like this Jets defense. So, maybe not on paper the most interesting matchup, but I think there are like a lot of compelling storylines there. And can Justin Herbert, I think, be a little bit more aggressive? Like, we see his tremendous talent week in and week out, but it's always kind of marred with this element of conservatism. Can he just let it go, let it rip, and kind of be Joe Burrow, be a little bit more aggressive, be a little bit more, incur a little bit more risk? And I think that would really unlock that offense at a high level. And but I don't know if he'll be able to do it against the Jets defense. So really, I think that's a really compelling matchup.
Should be fun. That's the Monday Nighter. Meanwhile, over in Frankfurt, Germany, the Dolphins just scored with 22 seconds left to go in the third quarter. It is now 21-14 Miami. So we will keep our eye on that as we head towards 1 o'clock and the finish of this one and the start of the Commanders Patriots and the rest of the games in the 1 o'clock slate. Back to Commanders Patriots next as we take a look at the New England offense and this Washington defense revamped without Chase Young and Montez Sweat. That's where we go next to start our final hour of the Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. Final hour of the Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. What's up? What's happening? That's Logan Paulsen. 10 years in the NFL. I'm Craig Hoffman, host of the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Also spent 5 years as a beat reporter covering the Commanders. So now we do this. We sit here on Sundays. We also do a podcast called the Take Command Podcast. If you haven't checked it out, we'd love for you to do so 3 times each week, including a live show that we do after each and every Commanders game. Be about 5:30. We'll stream that live on YouTube at the Team 980 and at 106.7 The Fan this evening. Logan, so the Patriots offense is pretty fascinating to me.
Is it?
Because, well, one, it's not very good. But two, you hear stylistically, schematically, right, a lot about the West Coast offense or the Air Coryell offense. And then it's kind of like, yeah, the Patriots do this other thing, and you never really hear what that other thing is. How would you describe what the Patriots are trying to do offensively and why it hasn't really come together this year with Mac, not Mac Brown. He's the football coach at North Carolina.
Okay.
It wouldn't be very good if he was playing quarterback. But with Mac Jones.
So, yeah, I had the privilege of playing for Bill O'Brien when I was in Houston. And learning that offense, it was really interesting because it's so many concepts that you're not familiar with. Like, they're not West Coast. They kind of look like West Coast, but they're coached a little differently. To me, it's got a more West Coast feel than Air Coryell feel because it is trying to create horizontal separation as opposed to vertical separation, but it's stuff that you're not super familiar with. And now when you watch the New England Patriots, I think it's got kind of this – it's been bastardized a little bit because, you know, Bill O'Brien went to Alabama for a couple of years, and there's a lot of college influence on it. There's a lot of RPO, a lot of mental mistakes with the RPO stuff, quite honestly, which is a little bit surprising. A lot of RPO, a lot of kind of quick bubble screens to number 81, Demario Douglas. So a little bit different in that regard, but you still see some of the same concept, and I still think it plays a lot. I remember being in the offense and being in the installs and feeling like this is a version of Kyle Shanahan's offense, or a version of that West Coast where it's like we're going to – our vertical shots are going to be more play action based, right? We're going to try and get you spread horizontally. We're going to try and find our matchups through game plan and through concept. And you see some similar concepts, but they were just coached a little bit differently. So I would say it's definitely more West Coast in origin. And now, you know, with all the offenses, like they take some Air Coryell stuff, they take some West Coast stuff, and they kind of mix it all together. And I think this offense is kind of a good iteration of that now with a little bit of college influence in there, which I didn't get when I was in Houston.
Yeah, so that's interesting. And I think the other thing philosophically that you see in terms of the mix with them is they want to be balanced. They want to run the football a decent amount. They want to, a decent amount more than like a lot of the modern West Coast offenses that are very pass happy. But you mentioned it's kind of it feels very Kyle Shanahan-y. And obviously Kyle takes a West Coast offense and is like, yeah, we're going to run the heck out of it. And run the heck out of it in modern day football is like we run it
45% of the time.
42% of the time, whatever it is. But that's something that I think you definitely see with New England, not just in their play calling, but how they're built. Their best player offensively is probably Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah.
By the way, they're without their big play tight end, Pharaoh Brown, today.
Oh, he's hurt?
They're also, Kendrick Bourne torn ACL last week.
Is Devontae Parker also out?
I have to check on Parker. I don't think, unless he's got a multi-week thing, I don't remember seeing him on the injury report. But I will double-check that real quick.
I remember reading at a contusion, which they were skeptical.
Contusion, by the way. What a marketing job on the word contusion.
Yeah.
It's a bruise. Now, it's a bruise that hurts like hell, but it's a bruise.
It is a very painful bruise, no doubt. But, yeah, so they don't really have a lot of offensive firepower, and they have to kind of – the other thing that I think when you look at good offense –
Parker is out. He's actually got a concussion. So
okay, and then is Trent Brown out too?
Trent Brown is out,
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so for context, Trent Brown is their best offensive lineman. Devontae Parker is the guy they've paid like their number one receiver. Kendrick Bourne is the guy who produces like their number one receiver. Pharaoh Brown is the guy who's been the most explosive offensive weapon for them in kind of spot situations this year. So I just listed 4 players that are pretty good at football for them. And they
like 4 of their 5 best offensive players. There's only 11 on the field.
Yeah, and so when you look at this, you say, we'll talk about that later. But one of the things that I think that's interesting about this offense is there is a vertical element to it that is totally lacking in this construction, right? They just can't push the ball down the field. Now, that could be because of Mac Jones's arm. That could be because they don't have an elite kind of down-the-field weapon. They do have guys on paper who should be that guy. They have Jalen Reagor, very fast. Tyquan Thornton, who might be one of the fastest guys in the NFL, but has never really developed that playmaking ability that everyone talks about every single offseason in New England. They're talking about Tyquan Thornton being this explosive playmaker, and for whatever reason, you don't see it on the field. So keep an eye on those two guys today, again, but their offense seems to be limited because they want to stretch it horizontally. Eventually, you need something vertical to keep the defense from compressing you down and constricting those horizontal windows. They just have not done a good job of that.
So that leads to kind of the interesting matchup thing today. If I was going to pick a first week for the Commanders to play a team without having Chase Young and Montez Sweat, this offense might be the one I pick.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a premier pass rushing week for the Commanders defense, in part because they don't even they don't have the vertical element, in part because they don't try. They get the ball out of Mac Jones' hands quick. You might miss the height of Sweat and Young, of batting down balls and getting your hands up and those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, like, this is an offense that is very quick to get the ball out, very quick to try to protect Mac Jones. And, the problems that this defense has had are some longer developing coverage busts down the field, inability to finish sacks when there should be the time to do so.
Right.
Those things aren't as relevant this week. You're going to have to be super disciplined.
Yeah.
And the upgrade in discipline from the two very talented guys who have left, to Smith Williams and to Hill specifically, but F.A. Obata as well, I think is actually a good matchup for this particular unit as currently constructed this week. And I'd expect the Commanders to give up, if they give up more than 20 this week, I'd say that's a bad week at the office.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is you mentioned that they have to be disciplined mentally, and I think when you watch the New England offense, they're having a hard time being disciplined mentally. There's a lot of penalties, a lot of mental mistakes. They seem to have a lot of offensive volume in, which is something that happened when I was in Houston, and they're just having a hard time digesting all of it. And now, Trent Brown, we were talking about him. He was maybe statistically the best pass protecting offensive lineman in football. He is now out. He was a guy that you could just kind of say, hey, block this guy. We're not going to worry about you, right? They're starting a right guard. Their right guard at right tackle. They're going to have a practice squad guy playing left tackle. So if you want to get right.
And that also means that you've got backups playing those guard spots
100%.
Against Allen and Payne.
So you should be able to generate a lot of pressure. I mean, they know that. The New England Patriots are aware of it.
Which is why they get the ball out of Mac's hands so quick.
100%. And I think when you say, oh, this is just like the Giants game, this is worse than the Giants game for the New England offense because they don't have any explosive playmakers. The Giants had Jalen Hyatt, they had Waller, they have Saquon, they have guys that can hurt you. We mentioned Ramondre Stevenson being their best player. He's a very good football player, but he's not this explosive threat for big plays necessarily, right? So it's really, to your point, can you just keep it in front of you, tackle well? They'll make mistakes. That's one thing about the Giants when you watch them. They weren't making a lot of self-inflicted penalties on themselves prior to our game. This team is not that. They're making a lot of mistakes. They're having a hard time pushing the ball down the field. They don't have the firepower to get it down the field. They do have people who physically should be able to do that. They just haven't done it at any point in their career. So, to your point, 20 points definitely should get that done. I think you're probably in that 14-point range, if I'm being quite honest. And then if you know that offensively, if you're EB, can you score 17 and win this football game?
Right, and that comes to, offensively, do not give them points. Special teams, do not give them points.
Right.
Staying disciplined on those as well, and then seeing what you can do. It's Take Command pregame show here on a burgundy and gold game day. When we get back, it is time to take a look at our pick six here on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan. Take Command pregame show on a burgundy and gold game day. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. So, Logan, we have our pick six that we do at this point in the show.
I can't wait. What was Anthony's? Let's talk about it.
That's what we're going to do. So on the Hoffman Show at 6 p.m. on Fridays, Anthony Haney, my producer, and I pick 6 players or entities, coaches perhaps, that we think are going to have the biggest impact on the Commanders winning or losing. After just trashing Anthony all week, because last week he picked all 3 of his before I got to pick any of mine, we returned to a civil you go, I go format this week. And I started, Logan, with Tyler Larson because, as we talked about throughout the show, he's got the responsibility of identifying the fronts and trying to target the runs and making sure this Commanders offense can function against an ever-changing Bill Belichick defense.
Yeah, I love that. That's probably one of my, if I was going to pick one, he'd be one of my first ones I'd select because, like you said, it's a very complicated thing that they're going to be doing. We're working against here today. So, he's a guy with a lot of experience. And, obviously last week against Philly had a couple tough one-on-one matchups with
Jalen Carter.
With
Fletcher Cox.
Davis, all those guys. But there wasn't
like
a mental hurdle, right, in the same way, right? And the New England does have some good interior pass rushers. The kid from Alabama they drafted in the second round a couple of years ago, his name escapes me at the moment, but he's a pretty good player, creates a ton of pressure for him. But the real mental hurdle here is identifying what the heck is going on, not only on passes, not only with blitzes, but also on first and second down. So I think that if he can get that done, that's going to be a pretty spectacular thing there. Christian Barrymore, there we go. But yeah, he's probably their leading pressure from the interior, from the nose guard spot. So, but yeah, much easier lift from a physical standpoint, but mentally, lots of stuff going on here. And like you said, if he has a good game and can get it called, at least it gives you a chance offensively.
So then Anthony's first pick was Jack Del Rio.
Okay.
Which, the coordinator always is going to have an impact.
It's so important.
But I don't think, if I'm picking a game where the coordinator is going to have a big impact, it's not going against Mac Jones and this version of this defense. I clowned him a little bit on the show for it, and he's like, I don't know, I think Logan's going to like it. So I'll let you speak for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you pick a coordinator, I like it because they're always going to have an impact. They're always going to be impactful, to your point. And I think this week it'll be interesting to see how he kind of changes the defense with the change in personnel and how he kind of fits guys in specific spots and tries to find advantageous roles for them, and how he calls the game I think will also be really interesting because, like we talked about, there's not a ton of offensive firepower right now for New England that makes you go, oh no, this is really scary. It's a pretty tepid group. How do you call your game? How do you maximize pressure against Mac Jones? How do you maximize the backup kind of who are now the starters, rotational guys at defensive end? How do you maximize Jamin Davis, who's a little bit banged up? Those are things that I think are going to be really compelling today. And so, yeah, Jack is obviously going to be important. He's a defensive coordinator. But it's how he's going to maximize the people that are in the game. So
no doubt. My next pick was Jamison Crowder. With the Curtis Samuel toe injury, obviously Jamison's going to get more snaps. But I think specifically the reason I think that's extra important today is if you're going to get the ball out of your quarterback's hands quickly, you need a reliable target who's closer to him. So the slot receiver becomes very important. Obviously your tight end becomes very important as well. But I think with Jamison, even though he's not the world's biggest guy, he has someone I think this team really trusts and relies on. I think it's someone that Sam has shown a very good rapport with in limited opportunities. And so I think Jamison getting out there more in general is a good thing. But specifically this week against this Belichick defense, a veteran guy who might understand, I'm hot here. I got to get my head around a little bit sooner. He's got that savvy and that understanding, and I think he becomes a very important piece this week, especially in key third down situations.
No, I think you're right, and I was going to clown you for it a little bit, but the more you spoke and the more I thought about it, I think you're right. I think
that's right. I can make an argument. Let's go.
There's a feel element too, like an experience element that he brings that even Curtis Samuel doesn't quite have in the slot. He's a true slot number 3 Wes Welker-esque type guy that understands zones, understands spacing, and you saw that a couple times. And I think it's no coincidence that Sam has a good relationship with Logan Thomas, because Logan Thomas understands zones and understands the underneath coverage. I also think Jamison Crowder has a similar feel and understanding for how to get open from that position. So in a game like today where they're going to be bringing a lot of pressure, are there side adjusts for him to kind of understand and digest? get his head around quickly when there's space. All those things I think will be very, very important in terms of maximizing. And like I think we've talked about it with your first two selections with Tyler and with Jamison. Identification and experience in identification becomes so important. And I think that's a really good selection.
John Allen was Anthony's next guy. Fairly safe pick. Yeah, John Allen, best player on the D-line, hopefully.
Yeah. What was his reasoning?
But I think the reasoning is without those other two guys on the outside, especially John's, I think performance had suffered with Chase being back.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you're the star now. Go be the star.
Right. No, and I think that's what I would say too. Is when John has played with Casey and James, he's played better because he can play more confidently. And I think if you're looking for a guy to have a big impact, John always seems to step up when the situation's conducive for him to step up. He's going to be going against a backup offensive lineman most likely, unless Cole Strange is healthy. I'm not sure what his status was. I know he was banged up in the week, but yeah, John should have a good game, and I think he'll play better with Casey there. I think having Casey play on his side and them have that communication pre-snap and Casey doing what he's supposed to do is going to allow John to play more confident, and I think you'll see a bigger impact from him today.
My next and final pick in our pick 6. So we pick 6 players who we think will have the biggest impact on the game. Maybe not the biggest, but it could one way or the other. Kind of a boom or bust pick is Andre Jones Jr.
Oh, you picked Andre Jones.
I picked Andre Jones Jr. because
he's going to play a lot.
He's going to get some snaps, and I think he's going to be in major situations. He's going to be in third down, like pass rush situations. When if New England, and from a game flow standpoint, has to drop back and pass, he has a chance to go make a play, get a sack, a strip sack. Like he could be the guy that does that with maybe the most pass rush juice of anybody on the team. But this is boom or bust because earlier in the year they planned on playing him more, and he had a couple times where there was a lack of discipline and his, lack of eye discipline or lack of ability to maintain an edge or some of these things that are not as sexy as rushing the passer. Really are the reasons why he didn't get any more defensive snaps and became strictly a special teams player. So for a New England offense that is going to try to confuse this defense, that uses a lot of motion, shifts around, like can he do the right stuff when he's on the field? I think he has a potential either way, boom or bust, to have a big impact today.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think like we talk about Casey and James and F.A. quite a bit, guys that have got a lot of experience that are talented in their own right. I think
and are going to play the majority of the snaps.
Yeah, and I think Andre's interesting too because now he fills that Casey Toohill, James Smith-Williams role when Montez and Chase were here, which is 15 snaps a game potentially, and I think. What do you do with those 15 snaps? How disciplined are you? And like you said, and it was interesting, I thought, in training camp he became a very kind of exciting pass rusher to watch. And then in the preseason he quieted down a little bit because so much of what goes into becoming good in those situations is correlated to you identifying, certain tells the offensive lineman has, the situation, all those things. And, has his little hiatus, his little break here allowed him an opportunity to mature in that area. And I think if he has, I'm excited to see what he does today. But he's going to play a lot of football today. It just depends on how effective he is and whether that role expands moving forward.
No doubt about it. And then last but not least, Anthony's final pick in the pick 6 was Brian Robinson.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think Brian Robinson is one of my favorite guys on the team. I think he does an outstanding job. He showed a little bit more patience last week, had some explosive runs. I think him and Chris Rodriguez, I kind of, when Sheehan mentioned him today, I think this could be kind of a thunder situation in terms of running the football. And both those guys have done a good job. And Brian Robinson, again, I think is an explosive playmaker. He's found ways to impact the game every single week. His blitz pickups last week were excellent. So, I think that's an excellent one. And if you're trying to limit some of the mental load, trying to slow the game down from an offensive standpoint, trying to possess the football a little bit more, I think you're going to run the ball a little bit more. However, I think his impact will probably be seen and felt more in terms of the screen game, honestly.
Yeah, that could be big. And I will say this, too, I think Antonio Gibson might actually be the better pick in terms of this segment, right? The impact, because he's going to play a ton of snaps. I think AG is playing way more than people realize.
Yeah.
Because he just hasn't had the playmaking impact that you'd hope he would have. But if they're going to have that screen game, also with Curtis out, they could line him up in the slot and use him a little bit more that way. Do they use some more empty formations? He's probably going to be the guy in a lot of those. And then as a blitz pickup guy, his role becomes pretty essential. So I think all three of those running backs could have an impact today, which is funny in an offense that doesn't really run the football that much. We get back. Danny Rouhier from Grant. Danny joins us for his thoughts on the game. Always entertaining, sometimes even insightful. Danny Rouhier with us next here on the Take Command pregame show. Take Command pregame show, final half hour here on a burgundy and gold game day, live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor with Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman on 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980, and streaming live on YouTube. Keeping an eye on the end of the Dolphins-Chiefs game over in Frankfurt. Dolphins driving, trying to tie it with 1:10 left, trailing by 7. Keep you in the loop on that as we intermittently prepare you for the Commanders and Patriots game. To help us do that, we welcome in our friend Danny Rouhier from Grant and Danny, 2 to 6:30 weekdays on 106.7 The Fan. Danny, how are you doing, sir?
I'm very well. An exciting update from the world of Northern Virginia travel soccer. My son's team, the ball just crossed midfield in a positive offensive direction for the first time today. So a pretty monumental occasion. It was immediately brought back down for a goal, but still, it was nice to see. It was nice to see that moment.
How deep are we into the game?
Right before halftime, my son's team is coming in second at the moment. It's only 4-0.
Okay.
So there's still some room for more goals for the other team.
Okay. Yeah, for those that listen to us on a regular basis, last time Danny was on, I think we started about 9-0, and by the time the call was over, I think it was 12 or 13. We'll see what happens today. Obviously the big story of the week is the trades, but ultimately you have a game that has to get played today. How do you think the Commanders' defense shapes up today in their first game without Chase Young and Montez Sweat?
So, Craig, you and I are, longtime sports fans, and we see this in a number of sports. And I know Logan played the game, and obviously it's just such a high level. This is one of those things where everybody less star power, especially when it comes to the defensive end spot. So what do you do about that? Maybe more blitzing, maybe more creativity, maybe more things that are exotic, but more accountability more than anything else. And it's not to run Chase Young and Montez Sweat under the bus, rather. If I've got talented guys like that, I'm going to say, go get the quarterback. We'll figure out kind of the rest. You don't have guys available now at that defensive end spot that are as skilled as those, two monsters who can do so much and are so dynamic on the field. So what do you do about it? You kind of go Greg Williams style, right? Where you maintain leverage on the outside shoulder of the left guard, or you maintain leverage on the fullback here, and you do this and that, and we become more assignment sound and maybe more accountable. I don't know that it makes everything better. It's easier when you've got a couple of guys that combine for 11.5 sacks, but we might see a different look defense. Jack Del Rio is going to be forced to adjust and do things a bit differently instead of just being able to rely on that front four to get pressure. Maybe now you got to do something else. Remember the beginning of last year, Jamin Davis was blitzing a lot. I think ended up with a couple of sacks through a few weeks. Things like that maybe you'll see a bit more. And this is a good soft landing spot if there is such a thing. This New England offense is bad. I mean, they are not good at throwing and not good at running. But other than that, how was the play, Mr. Lincoln? So this is a great test to kind of start the rest of the season here for this group to kind of get acclimated on the new way they're going to have to play.
So are you optimistic about this defense versus this New England offense? It sounds like it.
Defensively I am, Logan. I mean, again, if you were playing the Dolphins today, might be a tough ask, right? You're playing a few of these offenses in the league, kind of have to do it this new way, but New England's proven they can't really move the football on anybody. Now, I'm aware what happened against Buffalo a couple of weeks ago, but that's kind of the anomaly. That's different. For the most part, they don't protect well, they don't block well, they don't run it well, and again, there's no weapon on offense that scares you. I mean, it's Hunter Henry and Demario Douglas this week. With all due respect to those guys as NFL players, that's not something that's keeping most defensive coordinators up at night.
Chiefs, by the way, 4th down stop on Miami, so looks like they are just a couple kneel downs away from victory over in Germany. Big bounce back for them. Danny Rouhier with us previewing Commanders and Patriots here on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980, the Take Command pregame show. So the other side of the ball is obviously where we are moderately terrified, Danny, and sounds like from that, you are also there. If you're the problem is it's like we don't know what Bill Belichick's going to do, so I don't know how you come up with the game plan, but like on a big picture level, like what do you want to see from Eric Bieniemy? What do you want to see from Sam Howell? Like what can they prove to you this week as we continue to watch their maturation together in their first years in their respective roles?
So I think it's a great question. So for me, I think Eric Bieniemy, who's obviously forgotten more football this morning than I'll know in my entire life. But I get this sense from the outside looking in. I'd love you guys' thoughts on this as well. I think he's stubborn in a certain way. And I don't say that in a negative way. I just sort of think he's got expectations. And what comes with that sometimes is we should be able to do X, Y, Z. we should be able to run every route in the route tree. We should be able to execute these plays that I'm calling, and I'm going to hold these guys to that standard. Well, I think during an NFL season, your best laid plans to start the year oftentimes get laid by the wayside for whatever reason, and you're now just kind of doing field medicine. I think last week against Philadelphia, there was a different paradigm to some of the play calls, to the way they kind of went about their business to say the number one thing, the second thing, the third thing, all the way to number 100, we cannot let Sam Howell get hit. I know we should be able to run whatever we want to run, and he should be avoiding some of these sacks, or the line should be avoiding some of these sacks, or whoever's at fault. Excuse me. But I don't think it was happening, right? So I think he finally said, fine, I will change. I will do something different. I need that to be the paradigm going forward. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to see the development of Sam Howell. You're not going to be able to see the development of some of the young pieces on offense and this offensive line to figure out who's going to be here not only for the rest of this year, but beyond. I think there needs to be a complete paradigm shift. I'm hoping last week was the first step there. Even though New England isn't formidable in the pass rush, neither was Chicago, neither was Denver, neither was Atlanta. It hadn't mattered, right? Sam Howell ended up on his butt a lot of times. That has to be the thing that they prevent. You do that, you might get some pretty decent results. They put up 31 points, basically max protecting last week. I was pretty impressed with that. I'm hoping that's the new normal.
Yeah, 100%. And so you mentioned like development and progression for Sam Howell. Like, what is your expectation from him today, and what do you need to see from him today to make you go like, yes, this is 2 games in a row, solid performance. There you go.
Yeah, I am not bullish on this one, Logan. And by the way, fantastic question.
Thank you.
I am not blown away with expectation here in this one. I anticipate kind of a rock fight. And here's the thing: you got to win those games too, right? Sometimes the greatest quarterbacks ever to walk the earth had a 17 for 27 for 145 yards and a pick, and ended up being the exact right thing to do that day, right? It's one of those smash mouth, old school, grinded out kind of low ceiling games where you wait for New England to screw up, and they will, given the opportunity. So I don't have a great expectation today. I mean, look at past precedent, right? Number one, the non-Philadelphia Eagles samples are not particularly kind to Sam Howell, with
Sure.
the second half against Denver notwithstanding. And Bill Belichick is not coaching for decades at a pretty high level without being able to take advantage of some rookie quarterbacks. The record and some of the stats allowed sort of say that. And I know Sam Howell's not a rookie technically, but we're still in the single-digit starts. Maybe we've gotten double digits now. I've kind of lost count. Point of the dude's story is I expect them to make it really difficult on Sam Howell, as he's done so many young quarterbacks over the years. So I don't anticipate a big passing day, a big throwing day. I think this is more of a kind of an old school 13 to 12 kind of game that's going to set the game back a little bit, and fantasy owners are going to be pissed.
That'll be a great time. Sam Howell on my bench for Tua, who didn't exactly just give me a great performance over in Germany. So we'll see if Danny's right, and then at least I'll feel better about that. Danny Rouhier is with us here on 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980. Taking you up to Burgundy and Gold Game Day live at the top of the hour. One big picture question for you, Danny. We haven't touched on this today yet, but the kind of big picture element of the trade and Eugene Shen's involvement. He's the new senior vice president of football strategy, basically the analytics guru, the analytics czar. Technically, he's not supposed to start until tomorrow, but Ron Rivera and some others reported that Ron Rivera said, and others had reported that he was involved in this trade process. What do you make of kind of that bigger picture, slow motion restructure that is happening, and the fact that they were like, no, this guy needs to be involved as we make these big decisions about 2 very highly touted players?
Yeah, I think it's a good sign, and I know some people, sort of roll their eyes at that and buck at it. But I mean, I'm over the days of Bruce Allen going, "We're going to do it because of my gut," or "I'm gonna not let Trent Williams play and try to win some sort of petty argument." Right? I don't know how that made the football team any better. We need information at the table. Data and analytics are not dirty words; they're not curse words. It's simply looking at some percentages, and we're making bets when we bet on a player, against a player, etc. Right? When you draft somebody, it means you're not drafting somebody else. When you trade for a player, it means you're not trading for someone else. You're giving up somebody. These sorts of value charts and analytics type things are really important for organizations to make smart decisions. I operate by a pretty simple axiom, and there are always exceptions to this, guys, but it's pretty simple for me. I look at a player, and I go, am I going to re-sign this player? If the answer is yes, re-sign the player. No problem. If the answer is no, I have a follow-up question. Is my team ready to win a championship or capable of winning a championship? See the Nationals in 2019 with a couple guys going to free agency, Anthony Rendon, Steven Strasburg, etc. I can let it ride then if I have a championship contender. If I don't, the answer is no to both questions. If I don't have a championship contender and I'm not re-signing the player should be traded. And this is not something that's normally done in football. It's not something that, oh, my team just scored. My kid's team just scored. That's never happened. That's never happened. They literally just scored.
Hey!
I don't know what to do with my hands. That is very strange. There's a lot of jubilation.
Did your son score? Your son scored the goal?
No, he was about 100 yards away from the play.
Oh, okay.
But if there's any doubt, right, you're not going to re-sign the player. You look at the contract Montez Sweat just signed. I love Montez Sweat. I predicted a breakout season for him. I think he's really good, really consistent, the type of guy you want to build around. I don't want to pay market value for good because that means you're paying for great, and then we don't get great enough times. You lower your ceiling. You've got to have organizational confidence that you'll be able to find the next Montez Sweat, find the next cost-effective pass rusher. You can build around a few guys, but you can only build around so many players, right? I think it's essential to make those kind of smart, what seems like cutthroat decisions at times in advance. This is the beginning of that. Again, I like both players. They're both really good, both having good seasons. But you look at this year, they're not doing particularly well in terms of overall as a defense. There needs to be a different allocation of resources when it comes to building with this defensive line that was good, not great. So to me, it's smart and very encouraging going forward, even though it might be tough in the short term to be without two really good players.
All right, Danny, who you got today?
I got the Patriots, unfortunately. As I said, bit of a rock fight, like a 15-13 kind of a game. I think it's going to be a field goal fest, and it's going to come down to a play or two here or there. But it'll be the kind of thing where the effort is going to be good. That's something that Ron Rivera has been able to do, has been able to muster some fight in this group when they seem to have their backs against the wall, and it kind of seems like that right now.
All right, thanks for joining us. Good luck to your kiddos team on getting a second goal, or at least preventing at least 5-ish more from the other team.
Yeah, they have to wait till next year to get a second goal. But still, it's exciting.
All right, go enjoy your kid's soccer game. Thank you. That's Danny Rouhier with us. You can catch him tomorrow. Full reaction from he and Grant on Grant and Danny, 2 to 6:30 on 106.7 The Fan. We get back. We check in with Denton Day in our D.C. studios and get you ready for the Commanders and Patriots. He'll take you, of course, with Linnell through the game, but we have our players to focus on, our keys to the game, and our final predictions next on the Take Command pregame show. Burgundy and Gold Game Day live from Tap Sports Bar. Wrapping up the Take Command pregame show live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor with Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman. We're here every single Sunday ahead of Commanders games. So with the 1 o'clock games, we're here at 10, which is basically the rest of the season outside of the Seattle game, Logan, and the Thursday Nighter, which I don't think we have to be here on Thanksgiving.
We don't?
I doubt. I don't know. Maybe Tap Sports Bar is open on Thanksgiving. I shouldn't speak out of turn.
We're gonna do we're gonna do it at your house then.
Sure.
Set the podcast up there.
I got stuff.
You got stuff. I know you do.
We can do that. I got space now too. We just moved into a new spot. We would be cramming in what is the size of a closet, which is where I used to do the podcast from. If you would like to see my new set for the Take Command podcast, you can check out the post-game show tonight. We're about 90 minutes after the final whistle. We'll be on YouTube at 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Of course, if you can't join us live, it'll be on demand on those same platforms and our podcast feed. Just search Take Command in your favorite podcast platform. It is the part of the show, though, where we lock in with our final previews, final thoughts. And to do that, we welcome in Denton Day, host of Burgundy and Gold Game Day Live, back in our D.C. studios. Denton, how are you, sir?
Gentlemen, how we doing? Logan, I have great news for you. You do not have to do the pregame show from Craig's studio on Thanksgiving. You're good. I got you guys covered. I'm doing pregame that day. You guys get the day off, and you can stuff your face.
I didn't even know I had the day off. I thought we still had to do the show.
So did I. So it's awesome.
Denton, maybe you and I will do. We'll give Logan. It's a very long drive for Logan to come in from where he lives. Denton, you and I talk. Maybe I'll give you a hand.
Logan and I live in like the same area of Virginia.
That is true, actually. That is true.
Well, that's when you're young in radio, Denton. There's just things you got to do as a rite of passage, sir. And Thanksgiving pregame is one of them. I've done it. I've been there. And apparently I've graduated. My boss just hasn't told me yet. Anyway, the point is there's a Commanders-Patriots game today in Foxborough. Let's start off with our players to watch. Denton, you're up first.
All right, so I might steal one or two from you guys, but I'll
well, can you at least just steal only one?
Okay, I'll steal only one. Then.
All right, thank you.
I've said on a couple of times we are in the Casey Tuhill era of the Commanders now, so he's my player to watch this afternoon. I think when Chase Young made his departure, there was so much made from the coaching staff, from those of us in the media, and from fans about rush discipline and rush integrity. Well, now that Chase is no longer here, and whether that criticism was fair or unfair, I'm excited to see what Casey Tuhill is going to do with more reps, and I'm excited to see if this defensive line looks significantly different with guys that do play with rush integrity, or they rush the quarterback with integrity. So I'm looking at Casey Tuhill to see what he's going to do with more reps, and I'm excited to see what he can do.
And it's also something we haven't really talked about here, but like Mac Jones doesn't move around in the pocket. This is the first time all year, right? And so I do think that defensive line should play and should be more productive, especially against a banged-up group. I like that one quite a bit. I'm going to go Tyler Larson, and I know you might want to go Tyler Larson.
That's all. You can have Tyler Larson.
I'm going to steal Tyler Larson because I think Tyler Larson last week was important. Identifying pressures this week's it's like 10 times more important. Pressures, runs, all those different things that we talked about. We've talked about a lot on the show, but we think it's really important. That's why I'm bringing it up again. So Tyler Larson's my guy.
So I'm going to go with Jamin Davis. We haven't talked about him yet. We haven't really talked about the linebacker play at all yet. New England does like to run it quite a bit, so obviously he becomes a very important player with his physical things that he's got to do, run, tackle, etc. But he's also the green dot now. He's calling the defense.
Yep.
He's got to get everybody organized against a New England offense that does motion, that does shift. The good news is New England probably will make some mistakes when they do that stuff, some pre-snap penalties, some illegal motions. That's kind of been their MO this year. But when they don't hurt themselves, you got to be ready and get the coverages called, get all the fronts in the right place with some potentially, Andre Jones, KJ Henry, young guys out there.
That's a great point.
So Jamin getting things organized, kind of green dot Jamin, if you will, is my player to watch for today. All right, key to the game is where we go next. We take a statistical look at if X happens, the Commanders will win. Denton, your stat key to the game is?
I think, I guess it's not necessarily a stat, but if the game plan is very similar, so if Sam Howell is having a lot of success with the short intermediate passing game, and they what is traditionally called dink and dunk, I didn't think last week was dink and dunk against Philadelphia. I thought it was just execution. But if they execute the game plan the same way they did last week against Philadelphia, I think they're going to be in a good spot. We had seen them play so well early in the season against Philadelphia, and then it felt like that game plan kind of fizzled away for a couple of weeks. So if we can get that consistently and get it today, I think the Commanders are going to be in a good spot.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of go in the same vein. And for me, it's about, like, turning the football over. I know that's, like, a big, like, oh, my gosh, that's really good football insight. Wow, Logan.
It's very important.
You get paid for this. But I think this week especially, especially with the New England Patriots, especially after watching them, I know they don't have a high frequency of turning the football over compared to the rest of the NFL, but they do put their guys in good positions to be successful, to get turnovers by confusing the quarterback. And Sam Howell has shown when the defense gets a little complicated, and this isn't his fault. He's a young player. He's learning the game. When it gets more complicated, he's more apt to turn the football over. And you are not going to see a more complicated defense today, like the rest of the season. So, Sam, EB, whether it kind of coincides with what Denton talking about getting the ball out quickly, but can we get him so it's not – unpack it a little bit. Unpack it so he doesn't turn the football over. That, to me, is the key to victory. Yeah,
so I'm going to go a little bit of a chess play here. It focuses similarly to where you just were. I'm going to say 8 targets for Jahan Dotson. If he gets to that number, that means they've executed enough to run enough plays to get Jahan Dotson that number of targets. So I think he should have some good matchups today. Yeah. And so I think if he can continue the role he's been on, he played really well a couple weeks ago. The production wasn't necessarily there. Last week he had the production, went over 100 yards. Can he continue to play at that level and have the production follow? But the only way you actually get to that 8 target number is if you're efficient on offense. You convert on third down. You run enough plays to get him there. So it's in some ways it's a little bit of like the old run the football 25 times and you win. It's like, well, yeah, because you were up in the fourth quarter and then you called 12 straight runs. Nice. So there is some of that to this stat. I admit it. But I think Jahan being involved will help make that like a self-fulfilling prophecy because he can get you first downs. He can convert on third down, et cetera, et cetera. All right, last but not least, we pick it. Denton, who you got?
I think the Commanders get back in the win column, but I do think it'll be a lower scoring game, so I'm going to go 20-14 Washington wins.
20-14, huh? I want the Commanders to win. I want them to win very badly.
Makes our lives so much better.
But I'm a little on the fence about it. And because this is Commander show, I'm going to pick the Commanders. I'm going to say
Logan wants to walk out of Tap Sports Bar unscathed.
Yeah, 17-16 or something like that. It's going to be a gross one score. What did Danny say? Rock fight?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a rock fight. Good old rock fight. That's I agree with Danny. I don't think they haven't shown me that they deserve my trust, unequivocally. They're going to cover the spread, but I think it's going to be a one-point game.
So most of the week was leaning towards New England, and the more I've thought about how bad this Patriots offense
they're banged up.
That's it, right? It's not just that they're bad, it's that they're banged up. And I know we said that against New York, and I know we said that against Chicago, but like this one's even worse than those. Please, third time be the charm. I don't think it's going to be pretty, like 17-14 kind of game. But I do think the Commanders are ultimately going to be able to pull this off. At least that's what I'm hoping. We'll see. I'll be talking about it tomorrow on the radio, 4 to 7. Don't be late. We get started with our 1st and 10 observations from the game right at 4 o'clock on the Team 980 for the Hoffman Show. Even before that, Logan and I will see you for Take Command post-game live on YouTube at 1067 The Fan and at the Team 980. And Denton, you've got it from here, sir. The Burgundy and Gold Game Day Live show is next. For Logan, I'm Craig. And we'll see you next week back here at Tab Sports Bar at MGM